This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney.
Are these stocks under-owned by institutional Wall Street?
A lot of these companies talking about generative AI.
With Lisa Mateo on markets.
Investors just worried about the ongoing sales slump in China.
And Michael Barr with news.
A ship traveling through the southern Red Sea has been attacked.
The best in economics, finance, investment, and international relations. This is Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Tom Keene, Paul Sweeney, Michael Barr, Lisa Mateo, all here in the mid of the week, the mid of economic data, earnings as well, lots of earnings out. We'll look at Target and Macy's here in a moment. Futures up 11, the VIX back out 14, out to a 15 level now, 16.00. Massive drawdown yesterday, Paul. Massive pullback after 8 straight days up.
8 straight days of gains there, Tom. So we had a little bit of a pullback yesterday, but people were focusing on coming out in Wyoming over the next couple of days, where we're going to hear from a bunch of economists, including Fed Chairman Jay Powell. What is he going to say about this interest rate environment for the U.S.?
Good conversations on that today. Ben Emmons scheduled to be with us, Sarah Hunt as well. It'll be interesting to see how that all folds in. We look forward to it. Lisa Abramowitz and I will be there with Michael McKee. Michael leading our coverage. Amber just showed me the guest list that we will have East Coast time 7 to 9.
Okay.
And it's very Fred presidential. It's very... All right,
explain to me this cowboy bar thing. What's
9 to 11 East Coast time. See, I still don't know my time zones. Every time I wake up, I got to decide, is Los Angeles ahead or behind us?
They're behind, I think.
And I'm
way
using
behind.
fingers. I'm going like
It's
Chicago,
the whole California thing. Yeah.
Denver, LA to this day. I don't get it. We're going to get the show started here. We've got a great effort coming up. Brian Weinstein joins. Gurrow will darken the door.
Nice. Okay.
David Gurrow.
Right.
I don't know where
Talk
he
to
is.
his people.
Is David Gurrow in Chicago? No, he's here?
I think he's here.
Okay, well, that's good. David Gurrow will be with us as well. And Gina Martin Adams, most importantly, again, look at the levels, Paul. 41,017 SPX Dow futures.
Yep. And we're on a 20,000 watch for NASDAQ, 19,850 for the NASDAQ futures here, 5630 on SPX.
We'll have to see. And we say good morning to all of you, of course, out on Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. I'm going to do it short here right now. What an interesting announcement. For those of you across this nation, Boston is the strangest radio market because it's north-south, and then you go out west towards the Berkshires. It's a mystery.
It's New England, it's New York. I don't know what's going on.
What we've done is we've stepped in here. Sparta did this transaction. We've stepped in, and we're going to be from Mount Washington down to Block Island.
Really?
In Rhode Island.
Okay.
And out to Nantucket. Ian Bremmer's he lives in Nantucket most of the year. He'll be able to hear us. September 3rd, our new signal there, 92.9 FM, WBOS. We'll tell you a lot about that over the coming days, but just wonderful, the geographic span that 92.9 is going to give us across all of Boston.
Signal right there.
And New England. From the Interactive Broker Studios, our Bloomberg Business Flash, Lisa Mateo.
You got it in futures? Well, starting to wake up right now. We're in the green. Investors kind of waiting an annual review. U.S. jobs data, that comes out at 10 o'clock Wall Street time. Signs of weakness in that annual adjustment of U.S. payrolls, well, it could point to the need for aggressive Fed rate cuts, so that's why it's so important. We'll also get minutes from the Fed's last meeting. That comes out this afternoon. So we have NASDAQ futures up 0.2%, 47 points. Dow futures up about 0.1%. Same for S&P futures. We have the 2-year yield at 3.99%. That's up 1 basis point. The yield on the 10-year, 3.82%, and that's up about 1 basis point. Target, you heard about it, ended its string of sales declines in the second quarter. Shares right now, they're up about 11%. The company reported higher traffic in stores, rising online sales. Then on the flip side, you have Macy's. Their shares down about 8%, cut its net sales guidance for the full year. We're still waiting results from TJX, Urban Outfitters. That comes out after the bell. Also, Zoom Video Communications. Want to end with Walmart. Their planned sale of its stake in Chinese e-commerce firm JD.com. Will that push Chinese tech stocks lower? Walmart raised about $3.6 billion from that sale. Walmart up nearly 1%, but JD.com down about 8% in Hong Kong. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Very quickly, our Target, I guess, getting it done.
So far, during the back to school season, Tom, which I know you're all totally involved in, shoppers have sought value, including items like the $5 backpack and 25-cent boxes of crowns. That's what they're looking for.
Lisa, is it possible to keep a haircut under $150?
It's going to be tough.
Well, your son's in the Army, so he gets the free haircut.
He gets his haircut down.
It's
a quick zip
that?
in the head.
Exactly.
But when you add the coloring, the cutting,
Color. Are you?
it's the
What
color.
have we become?
Oh, I'm telling you.
Well, I mean,
Highlights, lowlights.
you have to invest in yourself,
I'm
Tom.
lost.
Alex still tells me you have to invest in your face. You have to invest in yourself. So, and John Tucker and I, we have failed on that mission so far. But.
So is Brian Weinstein, joining us right now from Morgan Stanley. Brian Weinstein here as we look at global markets. And I want to really make this a more holistic call as well. Brian, for the Q4, for 2025, where's the sectoral opportunity, the geographic opportunity?
For Q4 25, yeah. Listen, I think you're seeing things shift, right? Listen, by then, I think you'll see more life in China, right? I think you'll see a weaker dollar. I think you'll see a Fed that's eased a little bit, but maybe they're hiking again by Q4 25. I mean, not really something people are discussing. So yeah, I think the sectoral opportunities are shifting. I think they're moving probably a bit outside the U.S. So yeah, we're at an interesting point here as the Fed starts an easing cycle.
Morgan Stanley has such a heritage of the Pacific Rim. I think of Steve Roach in economics, Richard Berner in that effort. What does it take for China to turn it around? And is it a screaming buy right now?
I don't know if it's just screaming by right now. I mean, you just went through some news where people are still divesting things in China, right? There was such a big rush into China. You had to be there, you had to own it. And now you're still, I think, on the in the mid innings of people trying to reverse that. But listen, we know that China's a planned economy. We know they can stimulate when they need to. They're trying to get their consumer to be more active. They're trying not to be so, based on just state support. They need spending. It's going to take time, right? And China knows that. So as you said, long heritage of investing there. I think you continue to invest there. You just have to be patient, and I do think it turns around next year.
Brian, I mean, your title's head of global markets. I have no idea what that means, but I'm guessing that you can allocate capital anywhere you want for Morgan Stanley Investment Management. How do you guys think about the global allocation these days?
Listen, it's a great question, right? It's been such a U.S. tech dominated allocation story that people are afraid to allocate other places, and in some ways rightfully so. But again, that is slowly going to change, right? We don't expect those 7 equities to be up another hundreds of percent as they've been. So you do find opportunities in emerging markets in Asia. You do find opportunities in European equities, especially, again, everyone's thinking about Jackson Hole, especially if the central banks and pull off the brakes a little bit. We do think it'll help equities that have not done as well in the last year or two. So things like the equal weight, simple things like the equal weighted index in the U.S. Maybe better than the market cap weighted one, but definitely opportunities overseas as we get into next year.
Brian, here in the U.S., I can sit in a 2-year Treasury and get 4%. That seems like not a bad trade. Should I take some credit risk above and beyond that?
I think so. Again, I don't love where fixed income is priced right here. I think the market and where the Fed has trouble is they want to ease a little bit, but they don't want financial conditions to get super easy from here. They just want to help out the consumer that is struggling a bit. I don't think they're going to ease back to 3% by next year. So I don't actually love the 2-note. I think cash is probably still better. And I think credit is going to do well in an environment where the Fed actually does take their foot off the brake a little bit.
In the joyride of the last 15 days, we've had another plug-in infusion into cash equivalents, maybe out to 2-year. When does that break? What yield? Are we close, or are we distant from when the cash moves to something else?
Listen, I think at these rates, with the curve as inverted as it is, would I rather have 5% overnight, 4% for 2 years, or 3.82 for 10? I'll take the shorter, right? So I think this is a strange cycle, right? The market has been so far ahead of this. It makes Fed's job very difficult because they want to ease, but they don't want. I don't think the 10-year note's going back to 3%. So I don't like going out the yield curve. I think it started to happen. I think money's going to stay in cash.
Brian, thank you so much. Brian Weinstein, Morgan Stanley, here in the allocation. Interesting to hear the China comments as well. I guess, is it Target is why we're up?
I think
Do
so.
we know?
That's not bad. I mean, people are.
I mean, I'm asking for a friend. Futures up 11. Dow futures up 62. I watched Tigers Cubs last night.
No.
We'll get to that with our news in New York City. Michael Barr.
I'm proud of you. Thank you. Tom, Paul, Lisa. Warning of a difficult fight ahead. Former President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama have called on the nation to embrace Kamala Harris in speeches before the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. The former First Lady says hope is making a comeback and then tore into Republican Donald Trump.
Who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
Barack Obama, the first black president in U.S. history, insisted the nation is ready to elect Harris and would be the nation's first female president.
Kamala and Tim understand that when everybody gets a fair shot, we are all better off. They understand that when every child gets a good education, the whole economy gets stronger.
Former President Donald Trump has pledged to make America safe again while campaigning in Michigan as the Democrats gather in Chicago to nominate Kamala Harris. And meanwhile, Trump campaigned in Michigan as part of the battleground campaign swing during the DNC. He stood alongside sheriff's deputies in the city of Howell.
Over the past 4 years, the Marxist left has waged a vicious war on law enforcement in our country. They've taken away the dignity and the spirit and the life of some of these police officers, and that's why you see it. The crime is so out of control in our country.
Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, held a rally in Kenosha, Wisconsin, taking questions about Harris after making remarks.
Kamala Harris is going to run the campaign that she runs. I would say that I wish that she would do what I'm doing right now, which is talk to the media and actually answer some tough questions.
Vance also highlighted GOP investments into police. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has ended his latest visit to the Middle East without securing a ceasefire in Gaza. He warned that time is of the essence, even as Hamas and Israel signal that challenges remain. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul, Lisa.
Thanks, Michael Barr. I'm looking up a chart here in youngest team in baseball, and, you know, it's sort of interesting. I watched the Tigers last night, and it's sort of like watching Cape Cod League, except they're better. Nobody can shave, for starters. I mean, nobody's got a Gillette endorsement.
You know, I'm thinking of, I think the average is what, 23 or 24 years old or
They
whatever
all look
it
like
is.
they're 18.
Yeah, and when you're about triple their age, it's like, oh man, where's Norm Cash when you need him, man?
Yeah, but the Tiger image was a lot older. You know, Denny McClain. All these guys were putting down 3 martinis a night. None of these guys can drink.
On the train between
It's
Chicago
exciting.
and Detroit.
And I hope, Michael Barr, they don't trade them all away. It was great.
Yeah.
Can I just say for a moment, I mean, I'm hugely biased, to Fenway Park, right near the tower for WBOS 92.9 Boston, September 3rd. Wrigley Field is just, I've never been there.
Oh,
No, I've never been there either.
Oh, you gotta go.
I've never been there.
Gotta go.
I would love to go to
Still
Wrigley
remote
Field.
out there. Let's go.
Let's do it.
It was a perfect summer night, and everybody's fired up with the DNC in town. The Tigers are playing back-to-back 7 games in Chicago.
Yeah.
First time since time began.
Yeah.
The Tigers are hanging in there, close to 500.
I think O'Leary's cow was involved the last time that happened.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Anyways, it was fun to watch Tigers Cubs last night. A little Midwest baseball. Again, September 3rd, 92.9 FM in Boston. We are thrilled to hugely expand Good Morning Fidelity, State Street, everybody up in Boston.
They love us.
A big new single, September 3rd, 92.9 in Boston.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. Futures posting some small moves as investors wait Fed Chair Jay Powell's Jackson Hole speech at the end of the week. Right now we have NASDAQ futures up about 0.2%, Dow futures up 0.1%, S&P futures up 0.2%. We have the 2-year yield at 3.99%. That's up 1 basis point. The yield on the 10-year 3.82%, and that is little change. To commodities, spot gold lower, 2,508 an ounce. We have Brent crude $77 a barrel, WTI crude $73 a barrel. Over to currencies, a gauge of dollar strength. Will it pause a 3-day run of decline? So right now the dollar stronger. Japanese yen, euro weaker. British pound stronger. Bitcoin right now up about 0.2% at 59,000. Netflix shares, they hit their first record in 3 years after it disclosed a more than 150% increase in upfront ad sale commitments. That's compared to 2023. But the high is starting to fade. Those shares are down about 0.5% right now. And Microchip Technology, they've joined the list of companies that have been hit with cyber attacks. Their shares down about 0.5%. And gamers celebrating still. Video game developer Take-Two Interactive announced Borderlands 4 will be released in 2025. And that news, well, it has shares up about 2%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Lisa, thanks so much. He's not work from home. He's not work from office. He's work from resort.
Is he?
Joining us now, David Gura, of course, of The Big Take. He's somewhere I can't afford in Maine. That's all I know.
Is that right? Okay.
The lobster roll's like $100 for a lobster roll.
Great lobster.
Complimentary glass of champagne.
Phenomenal.
David Gura joins us right now. David, I did some math yesterday. President Obama, first election, Joe Biden, this huge election he had over Trump in 2020, Joe Biden got 17% more votes than Barack Obama did in 2008. From where I sit, turnout is everything. Is anybody in Chicago talking about get the vote out?
You heard this last night. Good to talk to you, by the way. We heard this last night from both former President Obama and Michelle Obama as well. This urging not just to get on the bandwagon and support the vice president in her campaign, but also to do the work that's going to be necessary to make sure that she wins in November. So this has been a through line over the course of this convention. I suspect we're going to hear more of it tonight when we hear from Vice President Harris's running mate and from former President Clinton as well. That yes, time is short. We're only talking about a couple of months here until the election itself, but it's going to take a lot of work to turn out those votes. And you see that in where the vice president was campaigning yesterday. Yep. As the convention continued, she was in Wisconsin. Of course, that is something that is seared in the memory of many Democrats. They took a lot of flack back in 2016 because Hillary Clinton and the former First Lady didn't go to Wisconsin. So making a point of getting to that state and to others like it over the course of this campaign, Tom.
Hey, David, boy, the sense of momentum over the last 3 to 4 weeks since President Biden kind of stepped down in terms of the campaign has just been extraordinary. If you're the Democrats in Chicago, where do you go from here? Do you just try to build on this momentum?
You see Vice President Harris really campaigning hard, really hitting the campaign trail hard, and it's not difficult to see the contrast between the way that she's approaching the campaign and the way that President Biden was when he was the presumptive nominee. So again, picking up on that, I was just saying about sort of the need for there to be momentum and doing the work to get people to the polls. It seems the Democrats are really hammering down on staying on the campaign trail, traveling as much as possible, trying to maintain that momentum. And, you know, a convention is a convention. It can be a snoozer. They're trying not to make this one, although I have had to stay up late at both of these nights, later than I thought that I would, but trying to capitalize on that momentum and translate it into energy that's going to consistently last until November when the election takes place.
Hey, David Gura, Dave Wasserman with a classic yesterday for the Cook Political Report, really slicing and dicing low engagement voters. How does Trump get low engagement MAGA? How does Harris get low engagement House of the Democratic Party, blacks, Latinos, everybody else?
It was a great piece by Dave. So let me start with the former president. He's really trying to focus on the issues of crime and immigration. He's hoping that those are going to be salient with those voters who might be inclined to sit on the sidelines. But he's really counting on that kind of riled up base to get to the polls in November. You look at what the messaging has been here over the course of this convention in the last couple of weeks of this campaign on the Democratic side. They're really trying to appeal to more than just a narrow base of Democrats. I think without any exception, each of the speakers at the DNC has tipped his or her hat to or made an overture to independent voters and Republican voters as well. We heard from Stephanie Grisham, who was in the Trump administration yesterday. We've heard from Republicans the Harris campaign has tried to bring in, including a mayor from Arizona who's thrown his support behind Kamala Harris's campaign. So really trying to present Kamala Harris as somebody who would be a president for all Americans, and kind of hitting on, of course, what is historically and really the case in this country. The president doesn't just represent a party or a coalition of people. It's the entire country. That's the message they're trying to hit over the course of the week in Chicago.
David, how concerned do you believe that the Republican Party is here with this, I guess, surprising momentum behind Kamala Harris here? How concerned do you think the Republican establishment is, the National Committee?
I think that they are still surprised and trying to find their feet. I mentioned those two issues, immigration and crime. They think that those are going to be resonant with voters, but they've had a lot of difficulty getting their candidate to focus on the record of both President Biden and Vice President Harris, to stay on message. And we see the former President Trump, kind of fumbling a bit, trying to find ways to attack Vice President Harris. So I don't know that they would admit to the concern, but it's clear that they're having some difficulty here trying to land what their counterattack is going to be. And I think something that's really consistent over the last few weeks is a Republican National Committee, a Trump campaign, trying out a lot of phrases, trying out a lot of lines of attack and seeing what sticks. And to be frank, Paul, not a whole lot has stuck yet.
David, have the leaves started changing in Maine? Is it an autumnal glow?
It is beautiful. I won't say the days are getting shorter, but it is getting a bit cooler here. And I'm eager to get back to New York. I think I'm on the show next week. I'm eager to get back to New York.
You're wheeling it. David,
I'll check out the Cape Cod League on my way back down if it hasn't ended yet.
Full disclosure, Lisa, you'll appreciate this. Girl wheels in at 8 p.m. the night before the kids go back to school.
Yeah, exactly.
They're still wearing LL Bean stuff when they go the first day of school. David Gura, enjoy Maine. Well deserved. Thank you so much. David Gura, of course, look to the big take. Gura working up in Maine on the big take.
Always on it. He's always on top of things.
David Gura, of course, on the DNC and some of the bigger thoughts as well. George Saravelis just publishes, and everyone in FX, even on vacation, the Europeans, they're on
it's a summer thing. It's not just a August.
It's like a month.
I think they've got it right.
They got it right. They're smarter than we are.
They are way smarter than we are.
George Saravelis at Deutsche Bank publishes on his 8-week vacation, mentioning the higher for longer range that's out there. And that is DXY now under 102, a 101, that's gone 105, 4, 3, 2, 1. Weaker dollar, yen 146.12. But the real headline, euro, decisively through a 111 level. Thank you to Jeffrey Yu, BNY Mellon yesterday, really calling out his return to weak euro, bold call by BNY Mellon into the end of the year. Look at sterling over 130.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, a pound sterling. We're sitting here at 130. So, but I mean, Tom, you're going to be going over to Paris soon, and maybe over to London soon.
Go to Rome.
You got to
Rome on deck.
Rome. Okay.
Rome on deck.
Okay, very good. That's the place to be. And the dollar's weakening here, Tom. I mean, you're going to have to save a couple shekels to get over there. I don't know.
Well, we'll see. And the airlines are interesting. Did you see the airlines are cutting back trips to China? They're post-COVID. They were rebuilding out China.
Yep.
British Air said the biggest problem is they can't fly over Russia.
Oh.
They have to fly around, which makes it a lot more expensive.
Okay, interesting.
But others, we need to get more on this. They're downplaying China.
I think we need to get Chinese folks coming here and coming to Europe to spend money. We need to get more flights from China.
They're going to Japan.
Yeah, they're going to Japan.
Big time. In luxury.
Absolutely. Yep.
Dana Telsey mentioned that as well. Let's look at the data right now. Target, at least we'll have all that for you. Target and Macy's split here. Target up, Macy's challenge. Futures up 10. Dow futures up 56. The NASDAQ up 40. Okay, I'm going to read the official script because I'm excited about this. From Mount Washington to Block Island, on the porch of the National Hotel, Block Island.
Really?
You can hear WBOS 92.9 FM. 92.9 FM. It starts right after Labor Day. September 3rd. It's a news source for business news from the financial center of New England. Bloomberg Radio moving to 92.9 FM. A gajillion, it's like a pristine signal. It's big. Gorgeous. I'm excited. Bloomberg Surveillance.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. Futures in the green. Traders gearing up for a key speech from Fed Chair Jay Powell at Jackson Hole this Friday for any clues on where interest rates are headed. Okay. Now, meanwhile, Fed Governor Michelle Bowman, she said she would support rate cuts if growth in prices slows further. So we'll get to NASDAQ futures. Up about 0.1%. Same for Dow futures. Same for S&P futures. As far as the bond market, we'll head to the 2-year yield, 3.99%. That's up 1 basis point. The yield on the 10-year, 3.82%. And that's up 1 basis point. We have spot gold lower, $2,509 an ounce. Brent crude, $77 a barrel. WTI crude, $73 a barrel. Want to check back in with shares of Target. Ended that string of sales declines in the second quarter. Their shares up 11%. Meanwhile, Macy's, they say more store discounts from rivals. Cautious consumer, they're to blame for its sales miss in the latest quarter. Their shares down about 7%. And Lazy Boy, they reported quarterly profits still topped estimates, but the furniture retailer described the consumer spending environment as, quote, challenging, so their shares down about 5%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Lazy Boy is still a thing.
Still a thing?
Way back,
it
was
really?
like a huge deal.
The Barker Lounger.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I mean,
Gotta get
great,
the recliner.
great chair.
They're still doing it.
All-time
Yes,
greats.
I have not. It's not Lazy Boy, but I love my recliner. I gotta
Okay.
say.
You have a recliner?
I do.
And do you actually put it back?
I
and
put
kick
it back, kick my feet up.
Nice.
That's it.
In the
Mateo
Mateo
is
household.
set.
Wow. Awesome.
My chair.
Yeah, my chair.
I
No
haven't
kids.
brought this up today. 10 a.m., the Sweeney hour.
Yep.
Who do you have? Alex still here today? Think so?
No, we don't have Alice. We give Alice a day off. She's got to do some special parenting stuff. So we got Jess Menton, which is like my all-time favorite. She
Is
comes
she
in
doing the
super
walk
prepared.
with the kids down Fifth Avenue
Yeah,
and the
probably.
Bergdorf Goodman
They're very
lunch?
much. Yep.
You know.
Yep. That's how Alex rolls.
That's the way she rolls.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
10
Good
a.m. this
judgment.
morning, not a small matter. Good morning, Dr. Wong of Bloomberg Economics.
Yep.
The annual payrolls benchmark revision. Sarah Hunt is in equities, and she's focused on this economics. Why are you focused on this payroll revisions if you're running stocks?
Well, if you look at what's been going on for the last year, one of the big things that people have been excited about is the labor market has stayed strong. And this has given the Fed room to not cut rates because the economy has stayed strong. And if this turns out, and there have been a lot of discussions about which of the various labor ways you should look at this are correct. If there's a big downward revision, then that labor story starts to take a little bit off and people really start to worry again about the consumer, because if you have a job, you're willing to spend, and if you don't, you're not. So I think that there's a big question
Right.
about how that plays out.
Atlanta GDP is coming down. It was 2.x, boom economy, solid economy. Maybe it's down to 2%. Is there a point where in the equity space, we become more like Macy's and not Target, where GDP and consumer pulse gives way to moldy earnings?
I think that's the big concern, right? Because what you've seen out of the sort of discount retailers, if you will, is good numbers. And Target had a lot of problems coming out of the pandemic with an inventory issue, and it took them some time to work through that, and now they're back on track. But with Macy's, it's hard to tell if it's just Macy's, but if that middle consumer is really starting to feel the pinch on both sides, I think you start to worry about earnings, and that becomes a question with equity levels where they are.
We had some. I think the earnings coming out of the second quarter were pretty solid. What did you take away from the second quarter earnings and maybe some of the, I guess, the forecast going forward?
Well, I'm going to give a big plug to Tom Keene's Corporations Will Adapt.
Yes,
and
you
they
go.
did
Thank you
adapt.
for listening.
Is Sparta listening?
No.
She's probably up at 92.9
Yes.
in Boston.
Working on that.
Working
signal.
on the painting,
Yep.
getting the curtains in correct,
Sure.
and all that.
Yep.
Because after Labor Day, we're on a big new single up
I know.
in Boston.
I know. It's huge. Big
Yeah,
stick.
did you hear she said that? That's great.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, I mean,
continue.
our earnings, I mean, what's your takeaway?
Well, I think that the big concern, and it was a concern that we shared quite honestly, was that margins were going to have a problem as inflation came down, because if margins were accelerating because of inflation and corporations were capturing that, then they were going to see a bit of a margin squeeze. So far, that has yet to materialize, and in fact, the expectation for margins going into 2025 and the back half of 2024 are pretty decent.
Okay.
So that's where your earnings have been able to be okay. The question is if the top line starts to get affected even more, that could be an issue.
Is your analysis narrow and sector specific and even within sectors? or is it more holistic about the market?
Well, the numbers that I was just talking about are more holistic about the market, but if you look at certain sectors, I mean, that's where also technology has really carried
Healthcare?
in a lot of places. Healthcare has been a little bit problematic coming out of the pandemic, but it's starting to work better and it's starting to do okay. I think the insurers had great numbers coming out because nobody was utilizing healthcare for a while. So the question is what's going to happen to them as utilization starts to pick up. But I think in general, the question about margins has been a lot less, has been more benign than people expected.
Lisa, is my Botox, is that utilizing healthcare?
That doesn't count.
That doesn't count. Okay.
Sorry.
Paul, save me here.
All right, Sarah, where do we go here coming out here? This earnings, we've got a Fed that presumably is going to be cutting rates. We've got decent earnings. Do we just stick with the Magnificent Seven? Do we try to get a little bit more creative out there? Do we look for value in sectors outside the Mag 7?
Well, some of the catch-up in the last week has actually been on the S&P equal weight, so that tells you that that market has broadened out a bit, so it's not just the Magnificent Seven. I think that downdraft in technology was bought pretty quickly. It was the balance of the market that took a couple more days, but you really have seen, I mean, it's almost like the beginning of August never happened, right? So there was a very quick snapback there, and I think that as long as you can see, you know, corporations are still spending money. There's plenty of cash out there. It does look pretty good. But if you start to see things really slow down on the margin, the question is where the valuations are now. Can they stay there or can they go further? What's your next leg up?
But the heart of this, and I'm going to cite Goldman Sachs, but you know, I'm not sure of that, folks. I don't have it in front of me. There seems to be a model from 6% revenue growth down to 4% revenue growth. David Kostin, like me, taking this off of nominal GDP. Can your world work successfully with nominal GDP giving you 4% revenue growth?
Oh, I think it absolutely can. And in the
people younger, Sarah, don't agree with this. I mean, you were 19 when we were doing this, but the answer is there was a time where nominal was there.
Yes, and I think that there was also, again, it is such an unusual situation to have gone through a global pandemic that the fits and starts and the actual numbers and how fast things are increasing are harder to put into a historical context when you have such a giant downdraft. I mean, I think that's part of the problem with the labor market. And one of the reasons that people are concerned about the revisions is because we're working off a lot of models that are hypothetical, that show a birth-death model for businesses and everything else. And I think that that's really difficult to parse when you go through such a big historic change.
Fixed income, 2-year treasuries, I'm at 4%. That's fine for me, but should I take some more credit risk?
Well, I think the difficult thing is now is that you know that the Fed is going to start cutting rates. They pretty much telegraphed that that's going to happen. And whether or not they do it in a big chunky fashion, which I don't expect them to do, we know that those short-term rates are coming down. So sure, you can take 4% on a 2-year, but you're not, it's going out further, that's the question. And credit spreads are still very compressed. Okay. So that means that taking that credit risk, you're not getting paid as much as you would have in any kind of with a little bit more uncertainty. So it's a little difficult, but I think that having some fixed income now finally is part of the portfolio.
All right, we're sending Tom Keene and Lisa Bromwitz out to Jackson Hole today. So they're going to get ready for this whole thing. What are they going to hear when they go out there, do you think?
Well, I think a lot is going to depend on what happens today with those revisions, because whether or not they have to talk about that or not talk about that is going to be a big issue. But I also think that it's been telegraphed, like I said, pretty well, that unless the data goes in the opposite direction and or you see a spike in inflation, we can start to expect to see rates come down. And I think that's going to be, if they don't do much else except deal with that, I think that's probably going to be what they're targeting.
So, I mean, I think the issue here for a lot of investors, Sarah, is, I mean, I've had a pretty good year so far. I mean, can't I just take my money and just put it under the mattress for the rest of the year? What do I do here?
Well, you could, unless you did it for a living, in which case people wouldn't really appreciate that.
Oh, we're paying you to do this. I forgot. We're paying you to do this.
I think, I mean, we've been pretty happy with our positioning thus far this year. That downdraft was so fast, nobody really changed very much because it was such a quick up and down. I think that what people are looking for is what's going to happen into 2025. What's going to happen as we go through the end of this year. This year looks pretty good. What's going to happen next year? We've got an election. There's some uncertainty there.
It's a general statement. I don't see exuberance within broader society for stocks. I can't believe I'm saying this. It futures 41,025 on the Dow. I don't sense, am I wrong?
No, I think that there is a real question of like, okay, we bounce back for all this. All these things happen. Where are we right now? And how much money do I want to put to work immediately? If I was starting a brand new portfolio, I would probably do that in stages because I'm not sure, given some of the uncertainties that we're seeing, why you would put 100% in it on day one, given that the equity markets are where they are. Which doesn't mean that they're completely overvalued. It just means that we're not in the middle of a downdraft. We had a correction. We turned around and came right back to close to all-time highs.
Yeah. Sarah, thank you so much. Sarah Hunt, thank you for being with us. Alpine Woods Capital. I'm not concentrating. I'm going back and forth with Bramo.
Yep.
I got to sit in the Gulfstream on the seat that looks backwards.
No.
I don't like that.
No, we're not doing that.
It's like being on a train in Switzerland. You just it's not normal.
Well, Lisa gets the prime spot on the Gulfstream.
Yeah,
we all know
it's
that.
her turn. She has the plane this time. I'm just going along for the ride, but I got to look backwards going out to Jackson Hole. I don't like that.
No,
it's painful. Futures up 10 with our news in New York City. Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Tom, Paul, Lisa. Tonight, attention turns to Tim Walz and his acceptance speech as Democrats' vice presidential nominee after Barack Obama and Michelle Obama mixed ringing endorsements of Kamala Harris with blistering critiques of Donald Trump last night. The former president drew laughs when mentioning progress in health care from the Affordable Care Act.
I noticed, by the way, that since it's become popular, they don't call it Obamacare no more.
Terry Haynes is the founder of Pangea Policy.
What you're seeing this week, though, is I think a unified Democratic Party, and that contrasts with a Republican Party that still is not quite unified. So I think through this convention, with 2 days to go, what you've got is a Democratic Party that's in better position to kind of consolidate and start talking to undecided and persuadable voters than Republicans are.
Terry Haynes with Pangea Policy was a guest on Bloomberg Daybreak. Multiple pro-Palestinian demonstrators were arrested after clashing with police during a protest that began outside the Israeli consulate and spilled out onto the surrounding streets on the second night of the DNC. Donald Trump, meanwhile, was out on the campaign trail as part of his week-long swing state tour. He was in Howell, Michigan.
This is a very dangerous time that we're in. It's dangerous in terms of crime and all, but it's very dangerous in terms of a possible World War III.
Trump's running mate J.D. Vance held a rally in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Voters in Arizona and Montana will be able to decide whether they want to protect the right to an abortion in their state constitutions. The Arizona Supreme Court ruled that advocates' use to collect signatures is valid, clearing the way for the issue to remain on the ballot. Global news 24 hours a day, whenever you want it, with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. What's the movie story this summer? Where's Barbie? Where's Oppenheimer?
I know we got some tentpole things that have been hitting them. Now, I'm going to go to Lisa Mateo.
We have to go to Lisa Mateo.
Deadpool. She has been all over this Deadpool thing, as has Alex Steele.
Yes, we talked about it together.
Yes, we talked about it. I mean, Deadpool, this thing. Now, what was the highlight of the Deadpool movie for you, Lisa Mateo?
The highlight of the Deadpool movie to me, it's very raunchy, which I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff. But Hugh Jackman looks amazing. I just have to tell you. Hugh Jackman,
good morning,
hats off to you. Good morning, Mr. Jackson.
Morning, Hugh Jackman.
Good morning, Mr. Jackman. But it really pulled in like so many audience viewers. I mean, that really helped the box office too. A lot of the animated films too are helping as well. But
so I think the takeaway, Tom, is the theater business, the movie business, isn't as strong as it was pre-pandemic, where middling films could do well in the theater. Now, to do well in the theater, it really has to be something special. People just don't go to the movies to the same extent, probably a little bit less than it was pre-pandemic, so you got to bring something there.
We say good morning to everybody in Hollywood and on entertainment across this nation that listens to Bloomberg Surveillance.
Of course.
I met Mr. Jackman once, and he's still
really
tunes in.
Wow.
And the one I just saw, Mad Max Furiosa.
Oh, you did see Furiosa.
And I'm sitting there with Mrs. Keene. I'm going, see the guy with the hair? He listens. Chris Hemsworth. Good morning. He listens all the time.
Listens to Surveillance? Good.
It's great.
Good
I mean, they want adult entertainment, and they're fixated on Lisa. I mean, it's
exactly easy.
That's all there is to it.
Exactly.
Good morning, Mr. Hemsworth. Bloomberg Surveillance from New York.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. Futures, well, starting to wake up. We have NASDAQ futures up about 0.1%, 20 points. Dow futures up 0.1%, 67 points. S&P futures up about 0.1% or 8 points. We have the 2-year yield, 3.98%. That's little change. The yield on the 10-year, 3.81%, and that is little change. Some news on the housing market. U.S. home purchase applications, well, they slid to the lowest since February last week, and that's really a sign higher housing prices. They're putting a strain on that increase in demand from falling mortgage rates. The contract rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage, that eased another 4 basis points to 6.5%. Uber, they plan a bigger push to get its drivers into electric vehicles. Now, the company's hired a former Tesla executive as its global head of sustainability. And sources say LVMH's Sephora cutting around 10% or more than 4,000 staff in China. LVMH ADR is up nearly 1%. And sticking with LVMH, Moet Hennessy, a new partnership with Beyonce. It's a new whiskey line. It's called Sir Davis, named for her great-grandfather. Yeah. He was a farmer, moonshine maker during the Prohibition. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Should we quaff a bottle at some point?
Ooh.
You know, I guess
Let's
so.
Let's do it.
Paul, this is exciting.
Yep.
92.9 after Labor Day in Boston.
Yes.
Can I tell you what this is like?
Please.
You come up from the Cape.
Okay.
You live in Fat and Large.
Yep.
And you're on 495.
Ugh.
And you're within the WBOS 92.9
big signal
range. Big signal.
Yep. Big stick.
And you circle around. And there's Dunkin' Donuts. The most
Everywhere.
important Dunkin' Donuts in the world is on Route 24, Bridgewater, just after 495. And that's where you unload to satiate the children, the offspring,
yep.
with Dunkin' Donut minis. Or that's where you sit and listen to WBOS
yep,
and the
absolutely.
stock report that we're going to do. We're going to do that September 3rd after Labor Day.
Yep.
We're switching to 92.9 FM in Boston. For those of you across the nation, it's like a ginormous economics, finance, investment market.
It is.
I don't know.
I mean, I back in the day when I was working on the street, you had to go up there 4, 5, 6 times a year to Boston.
It's huge.
That's how big it is.
Well, you know, we'll get the troops on from
Yep.
Boston. A lot of good people up there. A lot of good academics.
I say we go up there
well.
maybe.
But you know, I mean, I just want to make clear.
Remote.
Dunkin' Donuts, the most important shop. Is,
Yes, exactly.
Route 24 at 495.
Now, a look at the front pages. What's making news around the world? Your daily roundup of today's headlines from major publications.
And the front page is, of course, Elisa Mateo Hour. And it's brought to you by IBKR Financial Advisors. Switch to Interactive Brokers for lowest cost, global trading, and turnkey custody solutions. No ticket charges, no conflicts of your interests. IBKR.com/RIA. Lisa Mateo.
All right, so the U.S. Open begins next week, right? The fever's already starting, but the Wall Street Journal is saying that Americans are going to have more to cheer about because 5 U.S. men, 5 U.S. women, they're ranked in that top 20 for the first time since 1997. So for the women, you have Coco Gauff, right, and number 3. She wants to defend her U.S. Open women's singles title. You have Jessica Pegula is another one there. Danielle Collins, Emma Navarro, Madison Keys. And then on the men's side, you have Ben Shelton. He's 13th in the world. Taylor Fritz, Tommy Paul, Sebastian Corda, Francis Tiafoe. He's a semifinalist in the U.S. Open in 2022. But the last time, this is what I thought was interesting, that they had at least 5 men and women ranked in the top 20 was October 1996. Pete Sampras was the number 1 men's player.
Whoa,
so that's when it was.
That's going back.
And Monica Seles was the top ranked female player.
Yep.
So that's how long it's been.
I feel fortunate to have seen Forest Hills and really lived it.
Yep.
It was magical. I went out to the Open a couple years ago to see Emma Raducanu, and there's just too many people. It was just, they could like take 1,000 or 2,000 people away,
to me, I'm going next Tuesday.
Ooh.
So I won't be here, kids, because I'm going to be the first Tuesday of the tournament every year. It's the best day to go out there. And they process all these people, I think, very, very well.
They do. Fair.
And I think the U.S. Open is a quintessential New York City event. It's just, it is one of the greatest things in New York City, I think. So I'll be out there next Tuesday.
You know who's going to be there too? Carol Massar, Tim Stenevec, they're reporting live there Thursday, Friday.
Of course they are.
Each day.
They're stars. They get the good stuff.
They get to go there.
You know, Alex Steele and I, we go to like
what are we shopping?
Memphis. You know, and they get the U.S. Open. I get it. It's Carol Massar.
You and I are at the Dunkin' Donuts
exactly.
every 24 and $4.95, and they're at the Open with Coco. Next.
I'm not sure if you've been to an ATM lately that's not in your network. If you notice how much they're charging you now for those fees.
Thank you.
Okay, so Bankrate did this study. Those fees are at the highest rate. $4.73 is the average, but some people have paid more. Atlanta actually gets the highest fees, so when you go out of network. The good news that Bankrate did find is that overdraft fees are the lowest in nearly 2 decades. So, but the thing is that about 91% of the banks that they surveyed still charge the overdraft fees, so you're still kind of battling that part of it.
I mean, you have to have, here we go, folks. This is how you roll. You get a big wad of cash. That's how you do it. The kids don't do that anymore, do they?
No.
They don't have cash.
No, I have to admit I don't really carry cash too much either. I know.
See, the Jersey
then you
Shore,
can Venmo people.
I think of Bernie Sanders last night talking at the Democratic National Convention. I totally get the overdraft charge. You know, like bad. You have no money.
It's a business.
In your account. Great. But the bank thing, from a marketing standpoint, to go up to another bank where I may someday do business,
right?
And they're taking $3 from me.
Yeah,
it's insane.
More.
I don't get it.
No,
I don't. I just there's no reason. There's no
and I'll drive farther just to find my bank.
Yes, exactly.
Does Costco do they have ATMs at Costco for you?
They do. Actually, they do have ATMs
next to the hot dog place. They charge you $2 for the ATM fee while you pay $1.50 for the hot dog.
This one I find interesting. This is in the Wall Street Journal. A lot more people now are getting hip and knee replacements younger and younger, because they don't want to give up skiing, hiking, pickleball. They're more active in their 50s, 60s. Obesity on the rise. That extra weight puts more pressure on your joints. So they found that patients ages 45 to 64, a 211% increase in hip replacements, 240% increase in knee replacements. That's between 2007 and 2017. So more people are getting these surgeries. The technology is, of course, better. But yeah, they want to stay active.
That used to sideline people for months.
They don't want to be in the sidelines.
Now you can get right back up on that stuff.
No.
So all right.
It's like my mom. She's going for the surgery. She wants to keep playing tennis.
Is that right? Good for mom.
Her, 73.
I don't know. I have a friend, Carl, who wanted to extend his NHL career. He's looking at Chris Chelios when he played for the Red Wings. Carl, and he got both hips done, both knees, both this, and he's great.
And he feels good? Okay.
You should see him. He back checks like nobody I know. He comes back down the ice. He's up somewhere in Happy Land in New Hampshire. And, he back checks like a 25-year-old. I don't know how he does it. He's got fake hips, fake knees, fake this, fake that.
It all works.
And he literally back checks like a 25-year-old in hockey.
There you
Next,
go.
What do you
Maybe
got?
That's a key. And speaking of which, people living longer, the world's oldest person has passed away. 117 years old. Can you believe it? 117. Her name is Maria Brañas Morena. She's an American-born Spanish woman, and she has this huge following on social media. Of course she does. She's called the Super Catalan Grandma. So that's her handle. Everybody loves her. But she says, she was asked in past interviews, what's the secret? What's the secret to living longer? And she says she doesn't really do anything special. She didn't smoke. She likes to eat yogurt. Ding, ding, ding. There you go.
You're kidding me.
She does moderate exercise. But she had no indication of cancer or anything, never showed signs of dementia.
Wow. Born
So what a life.
March 4th, 1907 in San Francisco, facing dire straits, the family returned to Spain when Miss Brañas was a child. On the boat to Spain, her father died of tuberculosis. These stories back from the day are unbelievable.
Yeah. She went on, got married, 3 kids, more than a dozen grandkids. So
there, she lived through
a
the country's civil war and the brutal Franco regime. She had clear memories of the D-Day invasion at Normandy, she told the Spanish newspaper.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Yep, good for her.
Paul, I need to say thank you to you. You said shut up and listen to Bruce. Tunnel Love. Today, Tunnel Love with Bruce. Brilliant disguise. Good morning.
I wanna read your mind.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney.
Apple's still minting more money than God, right?
Geopolitics front and center for global Wall Street.
With Lisa Mateo on markets.
Stocks are coming off of another record high.
And Michael Barr with news.
U.S. Secretary of State discussed the conflict in Gaza.
The best in economics, finance, investment, and international relations. This is Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney, Tom Keene, Michael Barr, Lisa Mateo. We say welcome to you 2 days before the Powell speech in Jackson Hole. Bramo and I on the Gulf Stream will be out there. Looking forward to it. Adam Posen's scheduled to be with us.
Oh, is that right?
Sort of like an annual visit.
Player.
It's like 42 degrees and he's in shorts and flip-flops.
Yes.
But Adam Posen will be there from the Peterson Institute. It's my economics book of the summer. I'll talk about it Friday when I'm with Adam. Lots going on here. We've got a lift to the market. Target up 14%.
I know. Big
nice bounce.
Yes. Of course. I mean, I think people... you're trying to get a read on the consumer here, but the consumer seems to be spending.
10-year real yield, 1.74%. I haven't quoted it. West Texas, 73.34. Oh, I'm gasping. Why am I gasping?
Why?
I am so excited, folks. For those of you across the nation, Boston's this amazing radio market where, with a ginormous signal like 92.9 FM,
yes.
Starting, this is just after Labor Day, we're going to be on 92.9 FM in your drive time in Boston. And because the crazy elevation and the ionosphere, it's literally like from Mount Washington down to Block Island. It's
very good.
Ginormous.
That's awesome.
It's like KMLX in St. Louis,
right?
That kind of thing. Just after Labor Day, 92.9
good.
FM in Boston. And what's exciting, you don't understand this.
Nope.
You get the signal crystal clear at the Hilltop Steakhouse on Route 1.
Nice.
Except they went out of business. And the cows that were there, the famous cows, are now up in Linfield and Wakefield.
Okay.
And it's a killer signal as you get up north there.
I'll take your word for it.
Reading, Linfield, Wakefield, the cows are in front of a Pinkberry.
Nice.
Now,
there we go.
And so there you are.
92.9.
Historic landmarks.
Boston.
The cows of Hilltop Steakhouse will be listening to us September 3rd, 92.9 FM. Look for that WBOS Futures update. Let's get right to it. The Interactive Broker Studios, our Bloomberg Business Flash, Lisa Mateo.
You got it. And we have a slight lift to the markets. Investors awaiting this annual review of U.S. jobs data at 10 a.m. Wall Street time. Signs of weakness in that adjustment. Well, it could point to the need for aggressive Fed rate cuts. We'll also get minutes from the Fed's last meeting. That's later this afternoon. So right now we have NASDAQ futures little changed, up about 16 points. Dow futures up about 0.1%, 70 points. S&P futures up 0.1% or 7 points. We have the 2-year yield at 3.98%. That's little change. The yield on the 10-year 3.81%, and that is little changed as well. A turnaround over at Target, shares up 13%. You heard it. It ended a string of sales declines in the second quarter. Comparable sales, earnings per share beat estimates. The company said higher traffic in stores, and also they pointed to rising online sales. Now, meanwhile, Macy's, they reported that sales missed, lowered their sales outlook for the rest of the year. Sales also fell at Bloomingdale's, but they did rise at the company's Bluemercury stores. It's Macy's shares down about 6%. Still awaiting results from TJX after the close. It's Urban Outfitters, also Zoom Video Communications. And this news coming across the Bloomberg, Ford canceling plans for that fully electric sport utility vehicle.
Wow.
It's a shift. It could cost the car maker nearly $2 billion.
So
big news
EV
there. Yeah,
here?
that is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Really important. Let's stop there for this. Ben Emmons can wait too. Can you see Ben Emmons in a big Ford truck?
Yeah.
EV? I don't think so.
Cruising down.
But seriously, there's something going on here.
Yeah, I just don't know where. I mean, for the electric vehicle market, the question for a lot of investors, I think, Tom, is simply what is the real underlying demand for electric vehicles? I mean, you had the first responders, people who like this stuff, they want to get the newest cool technology. Okay, they bought. You had the Tesla folks that just love Tesla. They bought. The Matt Millers of the world, they bought. But how about the rest of us?
The Hollywood Reporter, Time Magazine lays off 22 staffers amid advertising pullback and restructuring. But the single sentence in their release I looked at, just like the Ford release, is changed consumer behavior.
Yep.
We never emphasize that enough.
No, we don't.
It's just about the decisions people make. Right now, we're going to go to Ben Emmons here for FedWatch on what Powell's going to do excuse me, on Friday. Ben, I'm going to cut to the chase. We've got employment revisions at 10 a.m. Could they be enough to change Chairman Powell's speech?
Maybe, Tom, but I think that is really about the Fed taking a more holistic view of the labor market, because the trends in itself are not deteriorating. It's just slowing and normalizing, as they're saying. And so these revisions, as we know, is just, I think, already in the market's price, so to speak. And although, who knows that statistically it could be a surprise, I think the Fed has an insight of like, there's obviously movement in the labor market happening with that deaf birth model and those type of factors. But I don't think it will change Powell's view per se. I think they've gotten to a point where they can cautiously cut rates, so to speak, because they're seeing the normalization of the labor market continuing. And that gives them a reason to say, hey, we can actually reduce the restrictiveness as labor normalizes. So I don't think this BLS report will do it. But I do think that Jackson Hole is for him the podium to lay out the conditions for this rate cut, which he already has said it's on the table in September. So I think that's what we can expect.
Ben, I guess the question for a lot of folks is September for the Fed. Do they go 25 basis points, 50 basis points? And then what do they do from there? How do you think that's going to play out?
Yeah, but also the market is really keen on seeing that path ahead, because it has priced in 200 basis points for the next year, and it has still a probability of a 50 basis point cut at 50%, which is quite high. And yet this cautious tone among these Fed members sort of reflected in some of these indices and tracking that it may not be this rapid rate cutting cycle yet, because there's no reason for it, right? That's what the data continues to show us, with some interim weakness in between. Some of these regional manufacturing data shows quite weakness, but it's not enough for the Fed to go all in and do 50 basis points cuts at the same time. We would have to see more deceleration in inflation for that to actually occur. So I think it's a cautious 25 basis point cut, but it does look like they've made more or less up their mind to do it in September to kick it off.
What's interesting to me, Ben, here is how far behind the Fed is. That's going to be an unspoken, they're not going to be talking about this at the Pioneer Grill over trout in, buttermilk pancakes. How far behind is the Fed?
Yeah, that is a really tough question to answer in a way, right? As the conference outlines, it's about transmission of monetary policy. So that clearly has worked. But how far are you behind in terms of, meaning your transmission has already reached all kinds of parts of the economy, and you have to now start flipping the switch, right, of moving faster with these rate cuts, just like 2 years ago when we were behind the curve on raising rates. I don't think so, though, that the economy is not reflecting an overly tight Fed, because that would be reflected into these retail earnings that came out this morning as an example. You'll see that right in there, right? Because that's, I think, where Fed policy quickly transmits at that consumer level. But that we can say that policy is restrictive is clear. Yeah. I think that the funds rate at these levels is restrictive. So there's some, like say, far behind in terms of, they can move with this policy now. Right? They don't have to wait anymore.
Ben, do you have in your head a tip point on unemployment rate? Where are we, 4.3? Something like that? 4.3. Is it like 4.5? Is it a round number? Is it 4.9? 5.1? Where's the Ben Emmons number where all hell breaks loose among the calm?
Yeah, I do think if you get anywhere above 4.5%, that you can clearly say like, okay, we're getting into a pace here of unemployment, rising faster. I do think that is a number to really watch. Plug it into any type of Taylor rule model, right? It really starts discounting much more rapid rate cuts as a result. So I do think that's a number to quote, so to speak. But we also know there's a supply picture here that's very dynamic, and that's maybe what these revisions show too. We do know that immigration has added to the rise in unemployment rate, because people come in in droves into the labor market, in the labor force, but not immediately finding work. There's a time lag there. So I think it's more like 4.5 Tom that we can have to watch. Yeah.
Great brief. Ben Emmons, thank you so much with FedWatch. Greatly appreciate it. Great research note. Look for that from FedWatch this morning. On Macy's, Paul, the EBITDA margin is under 10 cents on the dollar. The net income margin is like Kroger's 30 years ago.
Yep.
They're making 3-4 cents on the dollar. Is that a business?
That's a tough business. Boy,
Tough
retail,
business.
a tough business. You have to get inventory right. You have to get the fashion right. You have to, it's just a tough business to be in.
Have you run the Bloomingdale's Gauntlet?
No.
You go in the door, you turn left.
Yep.
And it's women's bag alley.
Okay.
Lisa,
thank
help
you.
me here. You got Fendi to the left, Dior to the right. Stand up, sit down, fight. Right?
Is that how it goes?
That's retail.
Bar thinks this is funny.
And do you sit in the chair that's set
Oh, you
there?
know the chair.
The chair that you
The
sit
chair.
and you just let her go shopping.
The husband
It's
just
the
let it go.
hubby chair.
Prada is, thank God, Prada is so far away. I get too tired walking there. With our news in New York City, Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, representing all of our Walmart wardrobe. The second night of the Democratic National Convention concluded with a speech by former President Barack Obama. He praised President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris while criticizing former President Donald Trump.
If we work like we've never worked before, if we hold firm to our convictions, we will elect Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States.
Tonight, Democratic vice presidential nominee Tim Walz will speak. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is testing out new messaging as Vice President Kamala Harris rises in the polls. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter has the story.
Trump is trying to change his strategy midstream, with the other side talking about unity and about him being a divisive figure participating in culture wars. So he is now saying he is not radical. Quote, "I'm just a common sense person that has been successful." Common sense. He's been in Michigan talking that regarding law enforcement.
This is a very dangerous time that we're in. It's dangerous in terms of crime and all, but it's very dangerous in terms of a possible World War III.
He also says about the party, conservative? Yeah, I guess conservative. It doesn't matter. Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
Lebanon's Hezbollah has launched more than 50 rockets hitting a number of private homes in the Israeli annexed Golan Heights. Today's attack came a day after Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with fellow Egypt and Qatar mediators as he pressed ahead with the latest diplomatic mission to secure a ceasefire in the war in Gaza. The largest drone attack against Moscow overnight, but all reportedly shot down. Russian authorities say 11 drones were headed to Moscow. 34 others were destroyed over Russian regions, including 2 over Kursk. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom Paulisa.
Thanks, Michael Barr. Rich Greenfield publishing moments ago at Lightshed on Bronfman. He makes clear Mrs. Redstone really has a tilt towards Bronfman. I find it fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting here. I mean, if you're Sherry Redstone and you have the control shares, that means the super voting shares in Paramount, you want to get a premium for your shares vis-a-vis everybody else because they are the super voting shares. And, you're trying to compare the two deals, one from Mr. Bronfman, one from Skydance, which gives you the bigger premium.
Yeah, I got a premium here, 7%. This is working off a Reuters sheet right now. To me, what's fascinating is the Bronfman Group is maybe 19 entities.
Yeah.
Help.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, I'm
Foreign
shocked
money?
that we've had it during this whole process for Paramount. You've not had one credible, what I call, in my personal opinion, a credible bidder.
Interesting.
And so we'll see how it plays out.
Much more on that is Rich Greenfield of Lightshed.
Yep,
this is Bloomberg Surveillance.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. Futures posting small moves. Investors awaiting Fed Chair Jay Powell's Jackson Hole speech at the end of the week. Right now, we have NASDAQ futures up 0.1%, 21 points. Dow futures up about 66 points. S&P futures up about 7 points. We have the 2-year yield at 3.97%. That's little change. The yield on the 10-year 3.81%, and that is little changed. We have spot gold lower, $2,512 an ounce. Brent crude $77 a barrel. WTI crude $73 a barrel. Now, we told you about Target, Macy's, now on to TJX. Yeah, the company behind Home Goods, Marshalls, TJ Maxx. Shares up 3%. Like Target, it also pulled out of that sales run. It raised its profit forecast for the year. Now, last week, Walmart reported a beat. This week, it's in the spotlight for the sale of its stake in Chinese e-commerce firm JD.com. Walmart raised about $3.6 billion from that sale. Now, Netflix shares hit their first record in 3 years after it disclosed a more than 150% increase in upfront ad sales commitments compared to 2023. But the high starting to fade. Shares are a little changed right about now. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Lisa, thanks so much. Greatly appreciate it. Anyone that knows me knows I'm huge on something called chart, paragraph, chart. Edward S. Hyman helped invent this. Edward Yardeni helped invent this. Many others. David Malpass at Bear Stearns.
Bloomberg Intelligence.
Jan Hatzius was this young Turk at Goldman Sachs. Dudley would go, Jan, 42 charts? Are you kidding me? Schroders has the same disease. It's fabulous. Schroders, they're very British. You know, like they, Fortnum and Mason, you know, good tea and all that. With North America, Schroders, Adam Farstrup just killing it with charts. We protect the copyright of our guests. Go to Schroders to get the charts, and you have the mother of all charts, which is real income growth remains firm. Yes. Does it give way?
Well, you know, we think it's going to hold up. We see right now the employment market is really a story of people coming into the jobs market. Of course, you've been talking about the Fed all morning. You know, are we going to get that rate cut? It looks pretty clear we're going to get the rate cut. The question from here is, what kind of cycle is the Fed embarking on?
So, how deep do they go? I mean, one of the questions I have for a lot of people is, because it's been a while since we've been in a Fed cutting cycle, a lot of people don't remember. How do they do it? Do they do 25 basis points every meeting, every other meeting, 50 basis? Do they front load it, back load it?
Sure.
How does that happen?
So, you know, the classic is, you know, we take the stairs up and the elevator down.
I've heard that before.
But we don't think that's the case here. We think we are going to get a shallow mid-cycle adjustment. You're looking like the mid-90s when they sort of had that mid-cycle correction. We need to ease conditions on the margin. It's too tight for where we are, but we're not in a crisis yet. So they want to keep from being too far behind the curve.
But inflation-adjusted incomes, I'm speaking for every politician out there, doesn't matter what party, sustain.
We think so.
Nominal wage growth is not going to come down.
So, you know, when you look at what's happening bigger picture, right, we've had people coming into the job market, but without an further increase in immigration, we really are going to have constraints on the job market. So we think that you're not going to see that dramatic softening into the market from here.
Head of multi-asset for North America. What the hell does that mean? What am I buying here? Am I buying stocks? Am I buying bonds? If my Federal Reserve is going to be cutting, if earnings are pretty solid, we just got through a pretty good earnings cycle, what am I buying here?
So we're keeping our positions in equities. We've been overweight equities.
Overweight equities.
We took some profits in July. We used the weakness to come back in. You know, we think you're at this point where duration, so government bonds are going to start to become more useful. In the very near term, you need to be careful about the front end of the curve. But as inflation falls, we think that government bonds can return to that classic sort of hedging and income component.
You have a brilliant chart. I've seen the chart. I've lived the chart, but I didn't think about it. And that the unemployment rate has come back to where we were in the nirvana of pre-06, pre-great financial crisis. Where's your unemployment level where we get above your green line and things become more like a red moment for the nation?
You know, I think it's really about the trend from here. So we're expecting things to kind of start to move sideways. But if we get to 4.5, right, the alarm bells are clearly going to be going off for the Fed.
This is fascinating, Paul. This is a huge debate.
Okay.
You're sitting there, the first week of September, October, and you get a 4 or 5, so the world changes.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I'm the Federal Reserve, don't I feel like the labor market's okay here?
Right now, I think they do, which
Okay.
is why I would expect that what we're going to hear from Powell is the need to begin to ease on the margin, but nothing dramatic, right? He's going to try to thread that needle because we're not at this point of crisis. But we know that you can get momentum in these employment figures, and that's what you need to worry about.
So, I mean, a lot of folks out there, as you're probably aware, both in academia and in the markets and practical markets, they think the Fed's already behind the curve, that the real-time data says you got to start cutting now. I mean, the consumer is softer than we think. The labor market's softer than we think. What do you think about that?
I think it's the nature of being a central banker that you're always a little bit behind the curve.
Okay.
So I don't think we're so far behind the curve at this point. I was more worried when they were behind the curve raising rates.
Okay.
And right now, the consumer seems to be holding up pretty well.
All right, so again, Tom's going to be heading out to Jackson Hole today. Lisa Bromwitz, Michael McKee, the full team out there. What are they going to hear? What's the message that Fed Chairman Powell should be sending the world?
I think Chair Powell is going to say, we see inflation coming down. We're still watching it, though, but it is appropriate to start to ease conditions on the margin. He's going to want to not have the market take financial conditions away from him. So this is what I mean by threading the needle. He needs to say, we hear the job statistics, we see the warning signs, and so we're going to come in, but we're pretty confident in the growth path.
Where's your SPX level 12 months out?
We think it'll be higher from here, but we don't think you're going to get the same kind of double-digit growth that you've had over the last 12 months.
Adam, thank you. Adam Farstrup, just a fabulous research note from Schroders, some real charts that tell a story. Look for that from Schroders, North America. Paul, WBOS 92.9 FM, after Labor Day, we're there.
Signal. Yep, we are.
Cowie Coffee, Provincetown, crystal
Really?
clear.
Okay.
I mean, across Cape Cod Bay.
Yep.
Cowie Coffee, crystal clear.
Well, again, Tom, I had a reader say, how about this? Clark's Trading Post in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
I mean,
They
they
can
have
get BOS. It's a reach, but they'll be there.
they have a live bear show there.
They do.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
they've
mean,
been
we're
doing it for years.
I mean, we can do a whole New England.
Can do a New England tour. Gura can lead it.
Yep.
We can't do it without Gura. Going to stop
Exactly.
at Freeport. I could see us, WBOS 92.9 after Labor Day, Millinocket, Maine.
Okay.
Right by Mount Katahdin.
You tell me, I'll be there.
You didn't think I was Mr. Outdoors guy,
No,
did
I
you?
did not. But I mean, I know you're Mr. New England. I mean,
I did so much outdoors that if I never see I mean, Bramo out at Jackson Hole is total canoe.
well, I think I'm not sure
She's like,
Yeah, we'll see.
stocked out REI.
I need a photo of her with a cowboy hat.
We had that last
on a
year.
horse. That's what.
No, in a canoe.
Okay.
I don't think we're getting her on a horse. That's
Okay.
Kate Greifeld's territory.
Yeah, that's right.
Me, I'll be at the Pioneer Grill having, buttermilk pancakes. And that. Again, folks, this is important. September 3rd, for all of you across all of New England, 92.9 FM in Boston, that will be where you will get your full morning's dose of economics, finance, investment, and international relations. It's a news source for business news, 92.9 FM, September 3-ish. It will be there. And we have to talk more Red Sox baseball.
Yes.
I mean, just because we got a bigger, more ginormous, there's no reason to talk Red Sox baseball. But,
We got to make sure we don't forget the Orioles.
no, we cannot forget the Orioles. Thank you.
We have a vested interest there.
For that. We got a market lift. It's been up 14 days in a row or whatever. Yesterday, a slight pause. Futures up 11. Dow futures up 70. The VIX was a 14 level into 16.01. The Sweeney yield under 4%. Didn't know that. 3.98%. Paul and I watching gold and all. Yes, we've spoken to Mr. Gartman's people. He's on the golf course. What can I tell you?
We'll get him on there.
25.49 on gold, flat for the morning. 25. Wow. 25.
I know, that's amazing. I mean, we need to get to a vault.
I mean, I
We need to get
remember
up Fort Knox or
Nixon and
something.
$35. I mean, that's a few years ago.
Yep.
Please stay with us. Economic data across all of this week. The Fed, Friday. Bloomberg Surveillance.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. We've got green on the screen as traders gear up for that key speech from Fed Chair Jay Powell at Jackson Hole this Friday for any clues on where interest rates are headed. Now, meanwhile, Fed Governor Michelle Bowman, she says she would support rate cuts if growth in prices slows further. We have NASDAQ futures up 0.2%, 48 points. Dow futures up about 0.1%, 77 points. S&P futures up 0.2%, or 13 points. The 2-year yield at 3.99%. That's little change. The 10-year yield 3.81%, and that is little changed. We have spot gold lower, 2,510 an ounce. Brent crude $77 a barrel. WTI crude $73 a barrel. A few companies making news. Chrysler parent Stellantis. They're saying they're going to delay plans for an assembly plant in Belvidere, Illinois. And they say they haven't violated any commitments that were part of this collective bargaining agreement with the United Auto Workers. Stellantis ADR is up nearly 2%. And Ford, yes, pulling back further from EVs. The company canceled plans for that fully electric SUV. The shift could cost Ford nearly $2 billion. It's also postponing a next-generation electric pickup and reducing its spending on EVs to 30% from its annual capital expenditures. Ford up about 1%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Lisa Mateo, thank you so much. Her schedule is so packed that I've literally tried for 3 weeks, starting in Milwaukee, to get her on. This is not about Republicans or Democrats. I'm going to state this flat out, folks. From sea to shining sea at Michigan, Ann Arbor.
Yep.
And you can take public policy 555.001.
Really?
Microeconomics for public policy.
No, thank you.
Is the absolute definitive voice in America on divorce and children. Nobody owns the high ground like Betsy Stevenson. Professor Stevenson joins us this morning. Betsy, everybody, whatever their politics, says child care around divorce and less divorced is absolutely antiquated in America. First question, how'd we get here?
How'd we get here? Well, I think it's that we made a series of choices over the years simply to not invest in children. Now that might sound a little glib, so I can instead tell you, partially we believed, and I think we now know falsely, that children wouldn't really benefit from structured curriculum-based education until the age of 5 or 6. So we started our public school system around the age of 5 or 6 and thought, well, kids are just sitting around eating dirt before that, so we can leave them at home or leave their parents to make their arrangements. It turns out that kids might eat some dirt when they're young, but that's not all they do. They're actually forming incredibly important brain development, and they benefit not just from the love and support of their family, but from curriculum-based education and early childhood learning. And so it's, I always get a little upset when people talk about child care as if I got to find a place to plant my kid while I go to work. And I totally get that some people it's that desperate. They just got to find a safe place to put their kid when they go to work. But I think as a nation, we shouldn't be thinking about solving that problem. That's an emergency problem. But we should be thinking about the big problem, which is how do we enrich and take care of children so that the next generation is supported and developed appropriately.
What do you want to see from Republicans and Democrats? Every chart I've ever seen, America's basically in last place. What do you want to see from politicians going through the convention motions? What's the most efficacious policy for Americans?
Well, first of all, I want them to act as if they're representing people who are too young to vote. They're not just representing their parents. And I think that's one issue in the United States where, we sort of see kids as property. Parents have pairs of shoes, and they might have houses and cars, and they have children. But children are actually individual people who are going to grow up and form our society. So I want them representing the interests of children. And that means that we got to spend on children, even though they're not going to vote for you.
Right.
Paul, you hear some lip service being given to things like the child tax credit coming from J.D. Vance, but we haven't seen him, put his votes where those speeches are. With Kamala Harris, she's making an argument for going back to that kind of expanded child tax credit that caused child poverty to plummet. And one of the best things you can do for investing in children is cause child poverty to plummet. But I think a bunch of middle class families out there are like, well, that's all well and good. I don't want to hear about children in poverty, but I'm still struggling. And so it's got to be a series of policies that are not just about lifting children out of poverty and then making sure that there is a level playing field in which all children have access to the kind of support and development.
Betsy, I want to get Paul Sweeney and Paul. One of the first people in Hollywood that started listening to me was Karen Doutras, who was the little girl in Mary Poppins. And I would suggest our child care policy is based off some Victorian or Edwardian nirvana of the haves. I mean, Lisa, help me here. Child care in America is basically a disaster, right?
It's horrible. You have a lot of parents, they're having to decide whether they need to work just to pay. Like, what's more beneficial? Should I go to work and pay this huge or enormous amount of money? Is it really worth it? Or should I just stay home and not take the salary?
Betsy, the pandemic, changed consumer behavior. People were locked at home. The kids weren't going to school. There was homeschooling. But it just kind of, I think it brought to the forefront for a lot of people the need for better childcare in this country. Is either party putting this front and center as we go through these conventions and come up to a national election? Is either party putting this front and center?
Well, I think we're hearing a lot more from the Harris and Walz campaign that they are going to put this front and center. But obviously, this is an area of disappointment coming out of the Biden administration. So it's really going to be up to a Harris administration to revitalize debate and discussion around how we can support families and children more. I want to come back to this point that families have to look at it and say, is it worth working? And I do this math with my students all the time, and I show them that there are lots of families in America where someone's basically working for nothing. Why would you work for nothing? Well, because if you drop out of the labor force because it's so expensive when your children are small to pay the child care bills, you'll actually find yourself, though, with 3, 4, 5, 6 years less experience, a hard time finding employment, and the wages you're going to earn are going to be lower for the rest of your life. So even though you're not earning a lot when you're going to work, when your kids are small, you're making an investment in being able to continue to work, for the next 30 or 40 years. We hear so much lip service about how much we value work and a strong work ethic. I think we should make it so that all people could choose to work by being able to afford childcare. We shouldn't be putting work requirements on single moms and then subsidizing married moms to stay home. That's a very weird judgmental set of policies, and that's frankly the set of policies we have traditionally embraced.
Professor, one final question. The people against you on this, and I'm going to suggest they've got a Lockean individualistic view, as I mentioned, going back to the 19th century. What do they want?
I think what they want is a return to what feels like a traditional family where, people just don't have to work that much and they get, to stay at home and take care of their kids, and the dad comes home at 5 o'clock at night and the wife has made dinner. I think the thing to realize is they argue that they want that, but they don't actually want the living standards of the 1950s. They don't, because you could get that if you lived off 1950s median income. You could have a 1950s lifestyle. Most people want a 2024 lifestyle. At the same time, they want to feel the security of some idealized notion of family life. I love the idea of children having their parents around them, having other family members supporting them. Right. But I also know that children need professional educators. And I think that we learned that during COVID. We tried homeschooling our kids. Right. I'm a professor, and I was terrible at homeschooling my own second grader and fifth grader. They were frustrated. They wanted their peers. They didn't want their mommy correcting their math. They wanted
Got
a
that
math
right.
teacher correcting their math. And,
Right.
the same thing is true when we're looking at smaller kids. They benefit from people who specialize
All
in
right.
early childhood
Betsy,
education.
this has been great. Betsy Stevenson from Michigan, thank you so much. Absolutely definitive. The work she has done, Paul, the persistency that Professor Stevenson has done actually studying divorce. There's no one in America that owns a high ground on that, like Betsy Stevenson. Whatever your politics is, just absolutely fascinating. We're not going to do that every day, but every once in a while you got to get Professor Stevenson in here. There's no question about it. Futures up 11. Economic data coming up at 10 a.m. The revision to the payroll numbers. With our news in New York City, Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Tom, Paul, Lisa. Barack Obama, along with former First Lady Michelle Obama, delivered a speech at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago last night. The former president spoke about the party's presidential nominee, Vice President Kamala Harris.
As we gather here tonight, the people who will decide this election are asking a very simple question. Who will fight for me? Who's thinking about my future, about my children's future, about our future together?
Michelle Obama told the crowd to get out and vote.
This election is going to be close. In some states, just a handful, listen to me, a handful of votes in every precinct could decide the winner. So we need to vote in numbers that erase any doubt.
Donald Trump, meanwhile, was out on the campaign trail as part of his week-long swing state tour. He was in Michigan alongside sheriff's deputies.
We're here today to talk about how we are going to stop the Kamala crime wave that is going on at levels that nobody's ever seen before. And she is, as you know, the most radical left person ever even thought of for a high office, certainly for the office of president.
Trump, speaking in Howell, labeled Harris the ringleader of, in his words, a Marxist attack on law enforcement across the country. Fresh Ukrainian drone attacks hit parts of Russia overnight. Ukraine has been targeting Moscow in what the mayor of the city is calling one of the biggest attempted drone attacks on the Russian capital of this war. The city's air defenses were hugely active, shooting down at least 11 attack drones. Global news 24 hours a day, whenever you want it. With Bloomberg News Now, I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul, Lisa.
Huge response out on YouTube live chat to our conversation with Professor Stevenson. Paul, you're not talking about me, Stargate. I mean,
Nope.
there's a couple of these that are just, let me get the exact quote here. They mentioned, I lost it. There's so many responses, I lost it. I'm sorry. Basically, they're saying the parents can't help their kids with the math. Who are you talking to?
Yeah, exactly.
Have you seen the kids' math nowadays?
No, thanks. It's the new math.
It's the new
old
math.
Yes.
Afterthoughts taking math, junior, senior year in high school that I gazed at junior year in college.
Right.
I mean, it's that much of a shift.
Yeah, and the kids are, I don't know, they're back at school. It's all good, and school starting here in the tri-state area in a couple of weeks.
Brent, thank you. In all fairness, mom and dad are too dumb to correct their kids' math.
I'm down
Thank
with
you,
that.
Brent.
Yep.
Nice observation on that. Thank you to Professor Stevenson. Huge response. We don't want to do that all the time, but to get Betsy Stevenson on is a rare treat. She's usually at Jackson Hole.
She's smart. Yeah.
Waxing academic and doing a paper and all that, but not this year, I don't believe. The real yield, 1.72%, as we talked to Adam Farstrup about that. He's pretty optimistic.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, he was. We'll see. But the Fed, we'll see what we hear from Fed Chairman Jay Powell out in Jackson Hole between the various hikes and horseback rides and whatever else folks do down there. Canoeing.
Grandma canoes.
Okay.
She's out there. She's got,
She's from the Upper West Side of New York City.
Hey,
I mean, she's going to be like a fish out of water there. Let's be honest.
Oh, no. No? Oh, no, you have no
Okay,
idea.
all right.
She looked out. Oh, I've got to go. It's Bloomberg Surveillance. Good morning.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. NASDAQ futures up about 0.2%, 41 points. S&P futures up 0.2%, 12 points. We have Dow futures up 0.1% or 70 points. We have the 2-year yield at 3.98%. That's little change. The yield on the 10-year 3.80%, and that is little changed as well. To currencies, the dollar weaker, Japanese yen weaker, euro weaker, British pound right now stronger. Bitcoin up about 0.5% at 59,000. Uber planning a bigger push to get its drivers into electric vehicles. The company has hired a former Tesla executive as its global head of sustainability. And gamers still celebrating. Video game developer Take-Two Interactive said Borderlands 4 will be released in 2025. Those shares up about 1%. And Starbucks gearing up to release one of its greatest strategies to get customers back into the stores. We're talking about the pumpkin spice latte. Gets released tomorrow. Boom. Yes. Bloomberg reporting. Yeah, no, it's not too early. It's
that's un-American. The pumpkin spice latte in August.
Tomorrow. You gotta get it. It's a big time for the company. Got a new CEO. You know, they have a lot going on. They got to reverse 2 quarters of same-store sales declines. They're counting on this. This is their saving grace. Got to do it.
I don't know.
I'm afraid to ask. I've never asked the offspring who buy these things by the dozen. What's a pumpkin spice latte run?
Oh, gosh. I get regular black coffee. I think it's about almost $6.
$6-ish?
Yeah, I think it's about $6.
You're right, Paul. It's way too early.
You walk across the street to the deli and get a styrofoam cup of coffee for $1.50.
Yeah,
it's the experience.
Okay, all right.
Adrian Woolidge is going to hang up if we talk about pumpkin spice lattes. It's very not United Kingdom.
Exactly.
His essay of 4 days ago is so important to America. I just screamed, I know, it's Starmer, it's England, it's Blair, it's boring, but it's about middle America. Adrian Woolidge is one of the great, great thinkers of the modern age. And he has written a jewel that is frightening for America. Adrian, I want you, first of all, Adrian, what is Middle England if I'm worried about Middle America 5, 10, 20 years from now? What is Middle England?
Yeah, Middle England is basically Middle America. It's ordinary people who play by the rules, try and get ahead, do what they can for their children, live in flyover territory quite a lot, but not always. The heart and soul of the country.
I mean, you say Britain is on track to lose 9,500 millionaires this year. Is Starmer playing to the fancy people? Is he doing a Jeremy Corbyn 101? How does it relate over to Trump-Harris in going to the middle?
Well, Starmer sold himself as a sort of heir to Blair, as a very centrist sort of Labour leader, and he's not turning out to be that way. He's turning out to be much further to the left, not as far as Corbyn, but further to the left than we'd expected. And he seems to have a real animus towards, Middle England, regular people who are not poor but not particularly rich. Their taxes are going to go up. Their fees on private schools are going to put VAT on private education, and they're going to build houses in in the suburbs, in the exurbs, in the leafy shires, almost in a sort of vindictive and unnecessary way. He does seem to have it in for Middle England, which I don't think is good politics. I certainly don't think is good economics.
Adrian, let me bring in my colleague Paul Sweeney, who lives in the leafy shires.
Exactly. So, Adrian, I mean, what's the politics behind some of those moves, do you think? I mean, it seems pretty basic to appeal to Middle America, Middle England. Why is Mr. Starmer kind of missing this?
I think he's partly playing to his base. That is, the people who fund him, who voted for him. A lot of the money for the Labour Party comes from the trade union movement. A lot of the legwork is done by the trade union movement. And those people are being rewarded for their support. We've just had a big pay increase for junior doctors, a big pay increase for railway workers. Now, you might argue that some of those pay increases are deserved and have been delayed for a long time, but they haven't been linked to any sort of conditions, any productivity improvements. They're just all quid and no quo, as it were. So he's rewarding his people. Now, the great lesson from Tony Blair is you can take your people almost, not quite for granted, but they're always going to be on your side. You need to reach out to the middle to build a sustained majority. And surprisingly to me, Starmer seems to be ignoring that. As I say, it's not just that he's not helping those people, but that he seems to be vindictive about it. There seems to be an element of stuff you to all of this.
Adrian, you wrote a book with a guy named Greenspan a couple years ago called Capitalism in America. I'm sure you put a huge effort into this, given a more aged and busy Alan Greenspan. And I'm looking at this wonderful history, the Great Depression, which our grandparents lived, stagflation. Adrian's too young to have lived that. And you get out here, what is the capitalism of Trump and Harris, Adrian Wooldridge?
The capitalism of Trump and Harris. I mean, for Trump, I think it's a sort of family business capitalism. Those are the sort of people he likes, not the corporate types, but the people who've built or inherited their own businesses. So he wants to reduce capital gains tax, corporate taxation, all sorts of things to help them build their businesses. And he also doesn't like a lot of the rhetoric of the corporate sector. He's a sort of slightly swashbuckling figure. I think with Harris, I'm not sure there is much capitalism there. I mean, it's a sort of, she represents a professional elite that gets its money partly from working for corporations, more likely that they'll be working for the public sector. Teachers' unions are obviously incredibly important. A big number of people in Chicago today will be officials for the teaching unions. So it's a strange situation which you get family capitalism represented on the Republican side.
Right.
You get the corporate sector. You get the professional sort of elite, the university elite, represented by the Democratic Party. And I think that the finance sector, the corporate sector, is a bit left out in this. They'd like the old-fashioned Republican Party.
Yeah, that looks like the way it is. Adrian Wooldridge, thank you so much. Congratulations on an important essay. I'll get that out, folks, on social. Adrian Wooldridge on Middle England as we look at Middle America is well. Bloomberg Surveillance this morning. We're brought to you by Interactive Brokers, their bond marketplace, Access, their vast selection of over 1 million global fixed income securities with no markups or built-in spreads and low transparent commissions. Learn more at ibkr.com/bonds. Paul, what do you see on the screen?
I see a little bit of green on the screen here, Tom. The market's a little bit of lift here. The S&P 500 up about 0.2%. Same for the Dow, same for the NASDAQ here. Yield's pretty steady here, Tom. I mean, we've got the 10-year Treasury, really no change here, 3.8%. Gold pretty steady here, $2,550 per ounce. WTI crude oil, Tom, $73 a barrel, kind of hanging down here at this level. And Bitcoin, I'm going to call that out for you. I know you're about to go there, just under $60,000 per token.
It is, and we got a lot of economic data before the Powell speech here. We can't forget that new home sales, and even a Kansas City statistic to keep us happy at Jackson Hole. We got manufacturing services PMIs from S&P Global, claims tomorrow. And this revision this morning, I'm sorry.
Now, I don't know why. Explain to me how this revision is such a big deal. This is an economic data point that I'm not that familiar with.
Okay, well, there's two explanations. There's the Michael McKee explanation, which is encyclopedic.
Yes.
And there's a Tom Keene, pass me a cigar explanation. And the answer is they're not perfect, and built into the system, folks, is correct and well-meaning, responsible revisions.
Okay, all right.
Of everything. GDP, job. This happens to be, and the key word, annual payrolls benchmark revision.
And we'll get that at 10
o'clock. Is it going to be a big deal? I'm not smart enough to tell you. Anna Wong will tell you every revision's a big deal.
All right, so we'll pay attention to that. That comes out at 10 o'clock Wall Street time, so we'll have that for you as well. And then after today, Tom, I mean, after we're done here with our program, you head out to Jackson Hole. How you get there, I have no idea.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Well, the Gulf Stream, it's a lot easier. I mean,
Okay.
I was going to go through Atlanta and back through Salt Lake City, but instead, Brahma's in charge of it.
Okay, she's in charge. Her people.
Well, not she's. Her people are.
Yep.
Bruce, Tunnel of Love to get you through to the 9 o'clock hour. Good morning, Boston. Labor Day. WBOS 92.9 FM.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney.
Why are we upset if we're creating jobs?
Inflation's still a thing out there for the everyday consumer.
With Lisa Mateo on markets.
The economic calendar jam-packed today.
And Michael Barr with news.
Tensions between the U.S. and China have heated up even more.
The best in economics, finance, investment, and international relations. This is Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Bloomberg Surveillance, Tom Keene, Paul Sweeney, Michael Barr, Lisa Mateo. Eventful day, lift to the market. Futures up 10, Dow futures up 70. NASDAQ fractionally higher, called 0.2%. The VIX just deep under 16.
I know.
15.99. Nice move on the VIX here. Coming up, the most important conversation of the day on equity markets, your courage to participate. Gina Martin Adams with us here, a valuable moment. We're going to get right to it in the 9 o'clock hour. For the interactive broker studios, the Bloomberg Business Flash, Lisa Mateo.
Yeah, we've got a slight lift to the markets. Investors kind of waiting that annual review, U.S. jobs data, 10 a.m. Wall Street time. We also get Fed minutes from the Fed's latest meeting. That comes out later this afternoon. So ahead of all that, we have futures. NASDAQ futures up about 0.1%, 33 points. Dow futures up 0.1%, 70 points. S&P futures up 0.1% or 10 points. We have the 2-year yield at 3.97%. That's down 1 basis point. The yield on the 10-year 3.79%, and that is little changed. Spot gold lower, 2,512 an ounce. We have Brent crude, $77 a barrel. WTI crude, $73 a barrel. A sign that shoppers are spending selectively, you could say. Target lowered its prices, snapped that streak of sales declines. It also raised its profit goals for the year. Their shares up about 15%. And then similar to Target, TJX also pulled out a sales rut, raised its profit forecast for the full year. Its shares up 5%. But then you have Macy's, reported another quarter shrinking sales, lowered its sales goals slightly for the year. Macy's down about 9%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Right now, back to Graham, Dodd, and Cottle. We're going to do that with Gina Martin Adams, running all of equity for Bloomberg Intelligence. Gina, I'm going to walk down the income statement right now. Gross profit, folks, was way up from anything net. Macy's, they bring in about 40 cents, 39 cents on the dollar gross profit. Apple brings in 46 cents, but the amazing difference, pretty close, 39.46. Okay. Net income, Apple's bringing in 26 cents on the dollar, and Macy's is bringing in 4 cents on the dollar. Gina Martin Adams, why would anyone invest in an income statement like Macy's versus an income statement like Apple Computer?
Well, okay. First of all, Tom, I thank you for asking me to comment on single stocks when you know that I'm not allowed. But nonetheless, we could talk in generalist. We could talk in generalist forms. I think a lot of it is, what are you paying for, and how much are you paying for that? So you generally see stocks with higher margins command higher valuation, right? And stocks with lower margins command lower valuations. And you see this pretty persistently across time, which is why when we look at relative value in equities, we're always normalizing that relative value for the historical norm discount or premium to the index. And frankly, tech has historically commanded quite a premium to the S&P 500. Most of those tech stocks do have much stronger margins than much of the rest of the S&P 500, or at the very least, much stronger long-term growth prospects, which is embedded in valuations. So I think you have to do your homework with, there are going to be certain industries where you're just not going to see margins that are as extreme as tech or some of the services industries, which tend to have stronger margins. But what are you paying for that margin? What are you paying for that productivity at the company is a really key question to ask. And there are points in time when we're paying too little, even for low margin entities in the S&P.
Hey, Gina, I know from talking to you and from reading your research and from your team, it's not just the earnings that get reported, it's the guidance that these companies provide. What's the guidance look so far from, I guess, the second quarter cycle?
Now, this has been such an interesting thing. In the second quarter, not only did we see companies in the S&P 500 dramatically beat expectations. I mean, expectations coming into the season were 8% growth. We're now close to 14% growth year over year for the index at large. So much better than expected growth emerged in the second quarter. But also for the companies that do guide us on the outlook, guidance shifted to a net positive momentum score for the first time in several quarters, and has been generally very positive for both revenue and earnings growth for the second quarter. This, I think, is such a stark contrast to what you're hearing from the macroeconomic community, from the macro data in general, which has been somewhat disappointing, which has really cast a sour tone on the overall investability of the equity market. quite contrary to that tone, you've got very positive tone coming out of guidance and also out of actual results from U.S. companies. Now, it's not consistent across the board. At any given moment in time, only about a fifth of the S&P 500 actually gives us guidance. So you do want to take it with a grain of salt. It's not the entire index. But nonetheless, when we look at guidance out of the second quarter relative to recent past, it is significantly more positive. So companies are telling us that things are getting better, in particular for the 493 companies. The companies outside of the Mag 7 are confirming that growth prospects are improving, not deteriorating right now.
She said that 6 months ago, 8 months ago.
I know.
Laughed at
I know.
her. Should we laugh at her now?
No, I mean, she was right, always. So, Gina, I know you and the nerds on your team, you not only look at guidance just kind of holistically, but you do it by sector. Are there certain sectors that are giving maybe better guidance than others?
Yeah, I won't take issue with the nerds comment. It's okay. we embrace our nerdiness at BI Stocks. Nonetheless, industrials has really shown up, and financials are showing up as in key industries outside of tech, where we've had really persistent strength. It really is. It's been an interesting season because industrials, financials, and a little bit of healthcare even are showing up as positive guiders. I think financials is really an interesting sector that investors should be looking at right now. It's just got this really nice macro tailwind with the Fed starting to reduce interest rates. Financials are beating on revenue for the first time in a very long time. So we're actually seeing accelerated activity despite the macro concerns that are in the market. Again, you would not guess this if you were completely only following macro data.
Right.
Housing market data hasn't been great. Consumer obviously starting to show pockets of weakness because of high borrowing costs. But the financials are really crushing expectations and are generally telling us that things are getting better.
Gina, earlier a guest alluded to China as the most unloved. On a 3 or 5 year basis, can Gina Martin Adams get enthused at Bloomberg Intelligence about Chinese equities?
Oof, tough question, Tom. Chinese equities are very consistently a buy at 11 times earnings. We saw that last year. Chinese equities got down to 11 times earnings. It created a major buying opportunity for Chinese equities. We bounced off of those lows. And now we're starting to see whether or not the fundamentals can actually put up to allow for valuations to continue to expand in China. It is a tough case right now for China for a lot of reasons. Mostly because we're not seeing the economic progress that many people had hoped to see in China, and earnings growth trends are not as positive. That said, we are coming off of a major multiple low. And if we can see that incremental improvement in confidence come out of China, you can see China work. Longer term, though, Tom, I have to admit that China's relative performance by comparison to the broader EM or even the broader global equity markets is a pretty massive disappointment over longer term time trends. So I tend to think of it as a tactical opportunity until we see some really major structural reforms which open that market to the global investment community on a more consistent basis. And also we see some more persistent fundamental improvement.
So Gina, for you and your team, what's screening well for you guys these days?
In terms of the global outlook, it's really interesting because when we looked at our global scorecard as of June, the last time we updated this, we update this every quarter, it told us that we should be looking outside of the United States. As the Fed eases, this is pretty consistent historically, non-domestic opportunities start to emerge. And I think that this is the right time in the cycle to start considering diversifying the portfolio outside of those mega cap tech stocks, which have really led us into this recovery phase. The global scorecard as of June pointed us toward Europe. Outside of the U.S. is an area of opportunity. Europe is lagging the earnings cycle of the rest of the world and just starting to show some earnings improvement moving into late 2024, early 2025, and Latin America as a secondary opportunity out of emerging markets. When we look at sectors inside the U.S., our scorecards again pointed us toward healthcare and financials as emerging opportunities where we're starting to see some earnings growth trends improve while we start to see tech kind of stabilize as opposed to really just leading the charge independently in the U.S.
Gina Martin Adams, solid effort as always. She knows what she's talking about, Tom. I know.
Brilliant.
Exactly. Can you put that in your single best idea,
It'll be a
Tom?
single best
Very
idea
good.
today. We'll lead with that. Gina
Very
Martin
good.
Adams, just absolutely brilliant. A clinic. That's textbook Gina Martin Adams.
Who hired her? It's a question.
I
don't know.
It's a question. I mean, same person that hired Michael Barr. Futures up 11 with our news in New York City. Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Tom, Paul, Lisa. Former President Donald Trump and former First Lady Michelle Obama were both on the campaign trail at the Democratic National Convention last night. Former President Barack Obama gave the keynote speech, and he wrapped up the evening telling the crowd in Chicago, no one needs a Trump presidency part 2.
We do not need 4 more years of bluster and bumbling and chaos. We have seen that movie before, and we all know that the sequel is usually worse.
The Republicans are not taking a break while the Democrats hold their convention. Donald Trump is out and about. Trump talked about crime. Trump, speaking in Howell, Michigan, says there will be no defunding the police.
What we should be thinking about is the opposite of defunding, refunding, you call. We'll refund, but we want to help the police.
Today, he will be out with his running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, focusing on national security. Polls do show that he does have an advantage on Kamala Harris on those issues, but she is performing better than President Biden did. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has left the Middle East without a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. The Iran-backed group says it's keen to reach an agreement, but Middle East expert Julie Norman says the prospects are low. She's co-director of the Center for U.S. Politics at the University College London.
The best news we can say is that the actors are not fully walking away from the deal. We heard, as you noted, Hamas saying they are still in this. In fact, they are not trying to hold it up. But the likelihood of a deal coming through soon is unlikely.
Julie Norman at UCL says Hamas is accusing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of pushing new demands to a point they can't accept. Julie Norman was a guest on Bloomberg Surveillance. Global news 24 hours a day, and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul, Lisa.
I'm just trying to see here. Do the Lions play the Patriots this year? Because, I mean, that will take full Bloomberg Surveillance coverage with what we're doing with 92.9.
Up in Boston, exactly.
I guess not. I guess they're not making it. I'm looking at the schedule here.
I thought we were going to put a little coin on it there, Tom.
Yeah, exactly.
It's their campaign to defend their NFC North crown. Is that true?
That is a tough division, a tough conference.
That is a real tough division. Yep. By the way, Mrs. Barr is dragging me out to San Francisco for the first of the season. So it's the Jets against the 49ers.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, why are you dragging a Lions fan out to San Francisco to see this game? Well, yeah.
Well, he's got to go to the Tadich Grill in downtown San Francisco. That's a must. Santa Clara, where the stadium is spectacular.
That's what I've heard.
Yep,
I've heard it's great. So
road trip.
Yep.
Big news, folks. I can't say enough about this. This is up in Boston. For those of you around the world, it's a huge radio market, a huge radio tradition. September 3rd, right after Labor Day, 92.9 FM. That's where we'll be. Huge signal. Really looking forward to the reach from Mount Katahdin to Block Island. I could see Michael Barr going up Mount Katahdin.
Mm-hmm.
He'd go across the knife edge. Bloomberg Surveillance, good morning.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. Futures, well, posting some small moves. Investors awaiting Fed Chair Jay Powell's Jackson Hole speech at the end of the week. We have NASDAQ futures up 0.2%, 43 points. Dow futures up 0.1%, 63 points. S&P futures up 0.2%, or 11 points. The two-year yield, 3.96%. That's down 1 basis point. The yield on the 10-year, 3.79%, and that is little change. To commodities, we have Brent crude, $77 a barrel. WTI crude, $73 a barrel. Spot gold lower at $2,508 an ounce. And speaking of gold, more ultra-wealthies are snapping up gold bars, and Bloomberg reporting that storage vaults to keep them, well, they're getting ready for more business. Yeah, more non-bank depositories. They're being built worldwide because of this surge. Netflix shares hit their first record in 3 years to disclose a more than 150% increase in upfront sales and commitments compared to 2023. Its shares up about 0.1% right now. And some more news from TJX. It's acquired a 35% stake in Dubai-based Brands for Less for $360 million. So it's going to give it some access to consumer markets in the Middle East. Shares up more than 6%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Greatly appreciate it. Joining us now, Annmarie Hordern from Chicago, reporting, as she always does, wonderfully on the politics of the nation, in this case, of a Democratic flavor. Open question, Annmarie, to start. How's the energy in Chicago different from any other convention you've attended?
Well, look, I think there was a ton of energy at the RNC as well, especially that evening that Trump came out to give his performance. I was on the convention floor, and it was electric to the people in the room. The man had just literally dodged a bullet. There was an attempt on his life, and then he comes out and explains all of that in depth to his supporters. And almost gave a sermon. But since then, a month later, this election has changed drastically, and there is fresh energy and momentum in this Democratic Party. Kamala Harris is drawing crowds that Joe Biden was unable to do for the past year.
In 15 minutes scheduled, there's going to be the Hispanic Caucus meeting. What does Vice President Harris want out of the Hispanic Caucus meeting?
Well, she wants them to be energized to get voters out in places like Arizona and Nevada, which now are in play for this Democratic Party. And these are states that she is going to be visiting. And she needs to do that because one issue that's close to a lot of these people in these states is the border. And President Donald Trump will be in Arizona at the border on Thursday, wanting to counter-program the rhetoric and the policies we're hearing out of the DNC. He really wants to try, or his campaign wants him to try, to focus on the issues, and that's one of them. So when she speaks to people like the Latino or Latinx coalition, it's about this, making sure they can run up these numbers in these states.
Annmarie, what is the expectation about the Democrats' positioning for down-ballot races? I've seen some reporting over the last couple of days that the momentum that Kamala Harris has generated so far since entering the race as the top candidate will maybe impact down ballots. What's the thinking on the floor there in Chicago?
Well, this is one of the reasons why when President Biden recently sat down with CBS this morning, he talked about that's one of the reasons why he decided to leave the race. He saw that the data he saw, the information he was given was that it was affecting his colleagues in Congress. There's been a lot of anecdotes about this. You have someone like Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan trying to claim that seat, trying to move from the lower chamber to the upper chamber. In a leaked report to the New York Times about a phone call she had with donors, she was talking about the fact that the issue she was facing was that with Trump on top of the ticket, with Biden on top of the ticket versus Trump, it was hurting her chances. Now there's renewed momentum down ballot that Kamala Harris can help pick some of these people up in very, very tough, a very tough map in terms of Democrats trying to hold the Senate and also trying to win back the House.
Annmarie, the script is you do the polarity at the conventions and then you run to the center. When does the run to the center Mr. Trump, I guess, is sort of unique because he's going to do what he wants to do. But for the Democrats, as an example, when do they shift to a center tendency?
I think they're trying to do that now.
Really?
They are balancing who is speaking. Yeah, they're balancing who is speaking at this convention. When you heard from Michelle and Barack Obama yesterday, it is this message about how this could be a ticket for every Americans. They are trying to lean into this idea, and Libby Cantrell was on Surveillance this morning talking about this idea of vibes and personality. Right. They're trying to reenact what happened in 2008. The issue is they have a very short runway. Potentially, they can do this because they have a very short runway and don't need to go into detail in some of their policy proposals that maybe some in the middle would not be excited to vote for.
All right. One final question. Can you get out to Cubs Tigers at 8 p.m. tonight? Can you sort of, do the Annmarie Hordern act and then slide out to Wrigley Field to take in 3 innings? No one will miss you.
I think it'll be a little bit difficult tonight, given the fact that Governor Walz will be giving his speech accepting his VP nomination. And also, Speaker Pelosi, which, Tom, I got to say, the line that struck me last night at the DNC was when Governor Newsom said he's coming from the great state of Nancy Pelosi. That's how he introduced California when he was calling up the end of the roll call. And in many ways, this feels like this is her convention. A totally different convention we are having now than we were planning a month ago.
Okay, I'm going to go see Dansby Swanson. You can deal with the politics. Annmarie Hordern, thank you so much. They're really great color in reporting. I mean, she's tough. I mean, she's out there.
Finally made it. I mean, it's tough to get out of the East Coast.
A lot of people on the East Coast. It was not routine. How you doing down in New Jersey?
Jersey, fine. The shore is fine. Yeah, it's all good.
Trains are working.
Yep.
It's and I guess we got some beautiful weather into the weekend.
We do.
And it was chilly here, folks. I don't know where it is where you are across the nation. I saw some 90s here and there, but a chill.
They had a little nip in the air last day or so.
We'll have to see on that. We are 35 minutes away, and I don't know how to sell this, folks. It's an employment revision number.
Yes.
I'm told by smart people it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, Michael McKee says we need to pay attention to it. So it's on the Go function. That's what I know. That means it's important.
Yeah,
it's on the Eco screen.
But it's not on my screen. It's not on anybody listening's screen. But I'm sorry, there's big economic data at 10 o'clock. Paul Sweeney, Alex Steele, they'll have it for you then. Futures up 12. They advance. It's fractional. It's August. But nevertheless, the VIX, 15.94, coming in under a 16 level. I think the yield space is fascinating. The Sweeney yield in 5 basis points over the reach of the week, 3.97%, 10-year yield 3.80%. I don't think anybody, Paul, stealed for like the 10-year to really move lower.
No, again, the 10 years, just under. Sitting here at 3.8% here. I'm not sure where we go, but a lot of folks are saying this thing's going lower. The Fed is going to be cutting rates, presumably starting in September. How much and how fast, don't know.
We're proud of this. For all of you across the nation, we're really expanding across all of New England with a ginormous signal. 92.9 FM, September 3rd, just after Labor Day. We're going to pick up 92.9. They've been playing, Bob Seger and Metallica
And I have some breaking news here, Tom, as it relates to Boston. We do have Harvard football again this year on 92.9. Yes,
I did not know
that is confirmed. They have a new coach. I don't get the name, but Coach Murphy, after like a gajillion years at Harvard, and what a career he had.
I did not know
And he would speak to us every week before Harvard's games. We're going to get the new coach. Andrew Ulrich is the new coach at Harvard, so we're going to have him coming up this season. So we love Harvard football up in Boston.
Could you see Duke Harvard? What a game that would be.
Yep.
That would be, Harvard travel down to Duke.
Exactly. Always welcome. Always welcome.
We'll see. Anyways, 92.9 FM, September 3rd, a massive reach across millions of people in New England. We say congratulations to our team for that effort. 92.9 FM, noon, the day after Labor Day is will be the launch date. We'll go into it. We'll have a lot more on that. You'll hear that. And, of course, we'll have all of our good guests. First guest I booked, Ken Rogoff.
Okay.
Harvard University.
Yeah, perfect.
First guest.
That's
Gotta have him
solid.
on.
That's solid.
First guest, Bloomberg Surveillance, 92.9 FM. Boston. Look for that after Labor Day. And across the nation. Good morning.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo alongside Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney with your opening bell report. We are about a half hour away from an annual review U.S. jobs data. Will we see signs of weakness in that adjustment? Could it point to the need for aggressive Fed rate cuts? Those are some of the questions. We'll also get minutes from the Fed's last meeting later on this afternoon. But how will the markets kick things off in midweek trading? Let's get right to it as we're off and running with the S&P 500 up about 0.1%, 11 points at 5,608. We have the Dow up 0.1%, 71 points at 40,904, and the Nasdaq up about 0.1%, 21 points at 17,837. We have the 2-year yield at 3.96%, down 1 basis point. The yield on the 10-year 3.80%, and that is little changed. We'll head over to commodities. We have spot gold lower, $2,505 an ounce. We have Brent crude $77 a barrel, WTI crude $73 a barrel. Over to currencies, we have the dollar weaker, Japanese yen weaker, euro weaker, British pound stronger. We have Bitcoin up about 0.2% at 59,000. At the open, want to check in with Target up 16%, TJX up 5%, wow. Macy's down 10%. That is your Bloomberg opening bell report. Tom and Paul.
Lisa, thanks so much. Keith Naughton over in Detroit,
really
out
good.
with an incredible story on Ford. This is not what I do, folks. I mean, Matt Miller's into it, Paul's into it. $1.9 billion is the estimate. I'm not going to say that's a one-off adjustment. I'm going to say that's a adjustment along the way.
It's the news kind of shocked me. Ford Motor Company is recalibrating its electrification strategy yet again, canceling plans for a fully electric sport utility vehicle in a shift that may cost the car maker, Tom, as you mentioned, around $1.9 billion.
I mean, and of course, with Keith Naughton, who owns the high ground on this, it's a huge thing, leading Ford to forecast that its EV unit will lose as much as $5.5 billion this year. And I mean, is this going to go down within the arc of our careers as one of the great missed opportunities? May I suggest, Paul? I defer to you.
Yeah, I don't.
There were the EV people that wanted to buy an EV have bought the EV.
I think so.
And that's sort of it.
I think the big question, Tom, for the automobile industry and those that invest in it is what is the real demand for EVs going forward? I just don't think anybody has a good feel for that. And so are you going to continue to invest money in that business at a loss when you know you can sell an F-150 pickup truck and make a huge profit on that truck with the gasoline? I don't know how they do it.
The single
Very
sentence,
difficult.
the automaker, this is wrapped around Farley's comments. Mr. Farley, the CEO, the automaker ultimately determined it couldn't make money on an all-electric big SUV.
Yep.
So can they make money on a smaller thing? I'm not sure.
I don't know. And the cost, the cost to make these things, a lot of the cost is outside of their control here.
Let's we can do this. We're going to segue this perfectly. We're going to go from Detroit, Michigan to the Pacific Rim. We can only do that with William Lee. Bill Lee's chief economist, the Milken Institute. Bill, I don't know if you're up to speed on this, but basically Ford came out and said today their EV strategy is not working, billions of losses. China completely dominates. There's a foreign affairs article this month. It's literally in my suitcase, folks, on the way to Jackson Hole. Bill Lee, the Chinese EV strategy. How does America compete against that?
It's going to be really tough, Tom. The Chinese have so dominated in their production of EVs. The state subsidies have made them so good at producing EVs. Their efficiencies are just better than anybody else right now. In fact, that's why you see Elon Musk over there, because he really has taken advantage of not only the state subsidies, but also he's brought his own technology there. So the way you compete, I think, is to sort of join them. But that is true. That's true for a lot of these new energy industries, electric photos, electric solar cells, and battery and electric vehicles.
So, Bill, a lot of investors, Western investors, got exposure to China through some of the big tech companies, like an Alibaba, for example. And a lot of those folks who financed a lot of the growth for China technology, I think they feel like China's uninvestable now, given what the government has done to not only technology, but other parts of the economy. What's your view to those, or how do you respond to those types of folks?
That's a great point, Paul. If you're already in China, like a Citibank, JP Morgan, even a Tesla, you can put more money in because you know exactly what you're getting into. You know the deals that you're getting into. You know the kind of market that you're going into, and you have a niche product. If you're a new investor, and a lot of our sponsors at Milken have talked about, how do you get into China now? If you're not able to do the due diligence you need to find out exactly what it is that you're getting into, especially a dynamic market like China, where the domestic market itself is not growing as rapidly as you thought it would have just a few years ago. Not only is the demographic situation dismal, but their near-term situation is really a problem because they aren't able to bring the amount of stimulus to aggregate demand that they really need to stimulate the economy and get growth going. Right. And part of that problem is because they're so heavily indebted. The size of the fiscal stimulus they need to bring is limited by the huge amount of debt that they have, not only at the general government level, but more importantly at the provincial level. Because as Tom, as you know, when you go into a deal with China, a lot of the deals are made with provincial governments. But now those guys are so heavily indebted, they can't make the kind of deals they used to make.
Billy, I look at the currency movement here. And folks, I can't emphasize enough the persistency of trend of, for example, Singapore dollar strength, literally over 20 years. Now we have finally a legitimate dollar weakness. For Bill Lee of the IMF and of Milken, is it a legit weakness or is it just a wobble along the way of selected Pacific Rim strength?
It reflects the shifting positions of these two economies, and in some ways, it represents the success of these currencies, both in Asia and the shift in the United States, where so much of our manufacturing prowess has really moved out of the United States, and that's what all of these CHIP Acts and all these U.S. subsidies are about, to try to bring back some of these jobs and reshore, or at least to friendshore, some of these supply chains. But again, we have to talk about the apparent historical success versus the prospective success going forward. Will China continue to be the super growth market? Will Asia continue to be the super growth market? For the latter, yes. It's very clear that given the demographics in ASEAN and India, there's a huge advantage and growth potential there. For China, not so clear. And as I said, the debt problem is really a huge problem for them, especially at the local level. And it's the off-balance sheet debt, the local government financing vehicles, as they call them.
What do the EM central bankers, or for that matter, the managing director Georgieva of the IMF, what do they want from Chairman Powell at Jackson Hole?
I think the one thing they want from the United States is a stability of policy and consistency of policy. You can't have the kind of database strategy that is so data dependent that you can't say how we're targeting inflation, whether we're going to be continuing to subsidize certain industries to try to attract them back on board. I think the foreign companies, as well as foreign governments and our own government, our own domestic companies, are looking for our government to be much more consistent in our policies.
Billy, thank you so much with Milken this morning. Greatly appreciate it, particularly that brief on the Pacific Rim and EV. We're scheduling, we have Keith Naughton sometime before Christmas? You know, we think so about...
He's good.
Yeah, we got Keith Naughton at some point.
Oh,
He's
good.
encyclopedic on this.
Yep.
Urian Timmer out moments ago at Fidelity. Sell in May and go away. How'd that work out, Paul?
I don't think so. I buy and hold, Tom. I think buy and hold. You get that all leverage cash fund, and you buy and hold here. I mean, you know, I just remember for me in my history, September, October's always been a tough period. It just seems like, but people say August is really the challenging period. But again, buy and hold, I think, is kind of what we're hearing.
It's a devastating chart.
We'll
get Urian Timmer on Best in Charts out there, just hugely
Fidelity,
excellent work at Fidelity, and of course, you know, we're going to 92.9.
I know.
FM Labor Day. I mean, that's, you know,
we're going to do a remote from up there.
You have Urian on.
Bob, let's make it happen.
Every 3 days, Urian Timmer.
Yeah, that'd be good.
We could go to Durgan Park.
Okay. I wish I want to go to Fenway, catch a game. I haven't been in a while.
It's good. Yeah,
It's good.
It's good. We could go to Lockover's. It's still there for lunch, fancy lunch.
You're in Burning Man. Oh, boy.
Is he there?
That's what I'm hearing. That's what the reporting's coming in.
Oh, okay.
Good player.
Very good. Dow up 60 points. It's a lift to the market. We're waiting. Well, it went down fractionally yesterday, but nevertheless up 0.2% on NASDAQ as well. The VIX 16.27. With our news in New York City, Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Tom, Paul, Lisa. Former President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama have called on the nation to embrace Kamala Harris in speeches before the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. The former First Lady last night says hope is making a comeback, and then tore into Republican Donald Trump.
Who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
Barack Obama insisted the nation is ready to elect Harris.
I noticed, by the way, that since it's become popular, they don't call it Obamacare no more.
Tonight, all eyes will be on Tim Walz's acceptance speech as Harris's running mate. Bloomberg's Annmarie Hordern reports another speech will be from former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Yesterday at the end of the roll call, when Governor Newsom introduced California with Tupac and Dr. Dre singing in the background, he said, "I come from the great state of Nancy Pelosi." In many ways, this is her convention. We are a month out when Kamala Harris would have been speaking tonight as the VP candidate on this ticket.
Bloomberg's Annmarie Hordern, part of Bloomberg's team covering the DNC in Chicago. Governor Walz's speech is set for 10:45 p.m. this evening, Wall Street time, aired on Bloomberg. Today, former President Donald Trump will be out with his running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, focusing on national security. Yesterday, Trump spoke at the Livingston County Sheriff's Office in Howell, Michigan. The former president mentioned the Democratic National Convention.
They tried to pretend that everything was great, the crime was great, the border was great. There wasn't a problem at all, no inflation, no nothing.
Lebanon's Hezbollah has launched more than 50 rockets hitting a number of private homes in the Israeli-annexed Golan Heights. Today's attack came a day after Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with fellow Egypt and Qatar mediators as he pressed ahead with the latest diplomatic mission to secure a ceasefire in the war in Gaza. Global news 24 hours a day, whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul, Lisa.
Michael, did you state that the governor of Minnesota will speak at
10:45.
Don't they know anything about media and entertainment and audience and stuff like that?
Well, they ran into this problem on Monday because the president
spoke after midnight.
It was
right?
Well, he was going through midnight. He started at a little after 11:30.
Oh my goodness!
And
what? I'm just thunderstruck.
Yeah.
Monday, I guess James Taylor, he was supposed to perform, and he got cut because everything.
JT?
Yeah. And
Nice
they cut that.
play
They
there.
cut that performance. Because
That's
of all
un-American.
this
I mean,
un-American.
I'd say that plain and simple, but JT's going to listen to WBUS 92.9 after Labor Day.
There you go. That's the time.
He's going to be down in the video. I mean, he needs to listen to economics, finance, investment. Can you imagine the songs we can play about greater New England all through September?
Winter, spring, summer, or fall.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, the sensitive Michael.
Yep, exactly.
It's just too much. You know, I'm sorry, 10:45.
Yeah, no, who's
You want to
standing for that?
introduce the guy to America.
Right.
The only reason you do that is if you thought no one was watching.
People on the West Coast, I mean, okay, so that's 7:45 for them, but I mean, it's the same old argument we had for Monday Night Football. They
Pennsylvania's
moved
in
Monday
the-
Night Football from 9 p.m. to 8 p.m. to maximize the audience. That's where you need to be.
Yeah, but they want to maximize Pennsylvania with Governor Walz, I'm guessing.
Okay.
10:45 in
Forget about it.
Scranton?
Yeah, exactly. No,
I just don't get it. Got green on the screen right now, 16.33 on the VIX. Let's turn a little bit of lift. Much of that off target enthusiasm. From New York City on YouTube, Bloomberg Surveillance.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. We've got green on the screen. Traders look through a mixed bag of retail earnings. Also, this is ahead of more data that will bring some clues about the health of the economy. We're talking about the preliminary annual revision of U.S. jobs growth. That comes out in about under 10 minutes from now. So yesterday, S&P 500 snapped that 8-day winning streak. This morning, we have the S&P 500 up about 0.3%, 17 points. We have the Dow up 0.1%, 45 points. The NASDAQ up about 0.3%, or 61 points. We have the 2-year yield at 3.96%. That's down 2 basis points, and the yield on the 10-year 3.80%, and that is little changed. Ford canceling plans for that fully electric SUV. It's a shift that could cost the car maker nearly $2 billion. So checking in with their shares right now, they're up about 2%. And U.S. coal producer Consol Energy, it's agreed to merge with Arch Resources. It's a $2.3 billion deal. You have Consol up about 8% and Arch up about 6%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Lisa, thanks so much. This is a joy. He was on with us and was riveting. I'm going to say 3-4 months ago. And nothing's gotten better. I noticed, Paul, in the Red Sea, just in the last day or two, there's a big boat, a ship, and they're saying that it's not under control. The pirates, basically, or whoever, have control of it. Anton Posner is encyclopedic on this. He's a victim of the career of academics at SUNY Maritime. He's the real deal. Like you got to bring a boat into New York Harbor. Anton Posner can do it. He joins us now.
I mean, he gets an undergraduate degree. I love this. From the State University of New York Maritime College at Fort Schuyler, I guess, or Schuyler. I didn't know that existed.
Yeah.
That's where you go.
There's a heritage
That's where you go for that stuff.
Of somebody that actually knows what they're talking about in logistics. Anton Posner, just as a general statement, across the Pacific, across the Atlantic, and the troubled Middle East, how unusual is boat logistics right now?
Yeah, good morning, Paul, Tom, great to be on again. And Paul, it's Fort Schuyler.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He's from New Jersey.
Yeah, exactly. We'll got to give him a pass for that. But got to get the pronunciation of the school right. Otherwise, he'll kill me, right? But,
yes, exactly.
Yeah, guys, right now, still we're diverting ships and dealing with problems in the Red Sea. As you said, Tom, Houthis attacked another ship. There's a ship that's declared not under command at this point after attack by small arms fire on a few boats that the Houthis sent out, meaning that the term not under command right now, meaning that she's lost power at this point. So not sure exactly what's going on that ship, but we're talking about a ship adrift in major shipping lanes, right? Which you can imagine is not a great situation for maritime trade. We're dealing with, for example, we're currently working on my desk, working on cargo, agricultural cargoes moving off the west coast of the U.S. into the region, and finding ship owners and ships that are willing to go into that area, the Red Sea. Very difficult right now.
Okay, I'm lost here because pirates have been around since Johnny Depp. Okay, so pirates are there, Anton. They've always been there. Robert Kaplan writes brilliantly about it in his book Monsoon. Why did the pirates finally become a story now?
Yeah, the pirates have never gone away. They've always been a part of dealing with shipping around the world in different specific regions, right? During, as you said, coming out of New York Maritime College, right? That was part of the education we got, right? Whether it's going through the Straits of Malacca, near Singapore, going into West Coast Africa, these have always been known pirate areas. In the early 1990s, the situation ramped up off the coast of Somalia, right? With everyone knows the story of Black Hawk Down, right? That was what was going on in Somalia at that time. And with a failing state, the failing state of Somalia caused a massive amount of unemployed people, right? That started looking at easy access to revenue. And that meant basically becoming pirates, grabbing ships, holding them for ransom. And it's been fairly lucrative and ongoing, right? With a break for a pretty significant amount of time as Somalia has gotten a little bit more under control. The Houthis are playing an old playbook, right? The Johnny Depp playbook. But this isn't Disney World, right?
Yep,
we're talking about drones. We're talking about small boats with rocket-propelled grenades at this point. So pretty serious stuff and far more sophisticated than the sword and dagger pirates that everyone knows.
Anton, I think I can get a job at Mercury Resources because I have on my phone the sea traffic app, Tom. It's kind of like the same thing for planes, but it's for sea traffic. I can monitor all these ships off the coast of New Jersey. Talk to us about the Panama Canal, Anton, because I'm fascinated by that part of the world. And I know they had a problem with low water levels, and that was hurting traffic. Where are we with the Panama Canal?
Right. Water levels have gone back up to pretty much normal levels at this point. We're seeing normal amount of ships transiting. Typically, off the top of my head, I think we're talking over 40 ships a day is pretty typical. So we're back up to those type of levels now. However, the Panama Canal Authority has instituted a reservation and a bidding system to get slots. So not a situation where you could just show up. It's not the New York State Thruway at this point where you could just go through with your Easy Pass, right? You have to bid for a slot on a specific day at this point, and then pay a significant amount of money to bid to get that slot to go through the canal. When I got through the canal when I was a cadet back at New York Maritime. I was on a Navy auxiliary tanker called the USNS Sea Lift Arabian Sea, and as a Navy ship, we had priority to go through the canal to go to. We were carrying jet fuel to the west to the Navy base at Rodman on the west coast of the canal. So pretty good. Yeah, but awesome. That was a long time ago, 1991.
We're going to run here in a minute. Anton Posner, just one final question. I assume there's a relationship of Pacific Transit to Christmas, to the holidays, to goods. Mm-hmm. Is it normal in August as you look out to the frenzy of December?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm certainly not a retail goods shipping expert. My focus is in industrial commodities, but when it comes to containerized shipping for retail goods that are coming in for the holiday season, this is key time right now. So getting these this containerized goods to the shelves this is when it's happening, right? Containers coming in. This is why this situation with the Canadian rail labor action is pretty daunting right now. So we're talking key time at this point to get goods in from Asia that are going to be on the shelves for Christmas. So it has to be planned months ahead of time.
So Tom,
deal with the supply chain.
Tom, the State University of New York Maritime College at Fort Schuyler, it's in the Bronx, and it's kind of right on the tip of the Bronx, like right by the Throgs Neck Bridge. So, I mean, if you're going to go do a maritime college, you can get there, and then you can get out to this ocean. Who knows where you can go from there? So that's what the good folks do.
Very cool. Anton Posner, love it. We got to do this, Anton, like every 100 days or so. Really appreciate it. Anton Posner there, and, stuff from a distance, folks, but it affects us all. It's really quite something. Mercury Resources down in Florida. We're already getting emails and blistering messages on 92.9 FM. After Labor Day, massive new signal, big stick, in all. And, I guess I knew this, but thank you, Sheila, for reminding me. Durgan Park is closed. I remember a waitress swearing at my mother at Durgan Park. We were kids. We loved it. Oh, yeah. It was like Irish, sort of tough.
Nice.
Not Southie tough, but, tourist tough. Okay. And Lockovers, my grandmother used to take me to look at the inappropriate painting on the wall. That's closed too.
Okay.
So Paul, where we're dining with Lisa here, and I don't have it up yet, but the restaurant is Newbury. And I guess it's a culinary experience. It's on top of the old Ritz, I guess.
Oh, now we're talking.
With the ballroom with the blue chandeliers.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and there's a library, there's personal dining, but that can be our hangout, the Newbury in Boston.
All right, we'll go up there and say hi to
Sparta
those
will
folks.
like that. We'll work up the Amex. I'll talk to Redo, keeper of the Amex, and see if that works out.
Yep.
This has been a great day. We head out to Jackson Hole, myself and Lisa Bramwitz, and a great team, the leadership of Michael McKee.
Yes.
Tunnel Love, Bruce Springsteen.
I'm driving a big lazy car, rushing up the highway in the dark. I got one hand steady on the wheel, one hand's trembling over my heart. And it's pounding, baby, like it's gonna bust right on through. And it ain't gonna stop till I'm alone again with you.